Thank you for joining this meeting of Grampian NHS Board by Teams, and thanks to everyone who's been able to join us today. First of all, apologies. And Sarah, can you run through the apologies, please?
Yes, good morning, everybody. We have apologies from Batty and from Tom Power.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for that. Any declarations of interest today, please? No, I can see no declarations of interest. Thank you very much for that. Moving on then to opening remarks. I'd like to recognise, first of all, today that this is the final board meeting for our Chief Executive, Professor Caroline Hiscox, who leaves us at the end of this week to join NHS Tayside as their interim Chief Executive. Caroline was appointed Chief Executive of NHS Grampian in October 2020, after 5 years with the Health Board, 3 as Nurse Director. In addition to leading the organisation through the pandemic, she has set us on course towards achieving the internationally renowned Magnet accreditation. Caroline's inclusive management style and her patient-centred approach has served NHS Grampian really well and contributed hugely to our organisation's positive culture. I know that Caroline has worked incredibly hard with colleagues and partners to create an environment where people feel empowered and supported, enabling them to deliver the best care possible for the people of Grampian. And I'm sure you will all join me in wishing Caroline every success in her new role. I would also like to take this opportunity to acknowledge that our current Deputy Chief Executive and Director of Strategy, Adam Caldwells, will take up the reins from Caroline on Monday as NHS Grampian's interim Chief Executive. Adam has spent 27 years working across Grampian in hospital, community and system-wide roles. He spearheaded the formation of the Aberdeenshire Health and Social Care Partnership as its Chief Officer, and more recently has been the driving force behind the development of NHS Grampian's Plan for the Future, which sets out how we are working towards sustainable health and care with a focus on enabling wellness as well as responding to illness. I and the board are very much looking forward to working with you in your new role as Chief Executive, Adam, and wish you very well too. This is also Paul Allen's final board meeting. As Director of Infrastructure and Sustainability, Paul is attending today's meeting to present the digital strategy, but he retires this month. Having joined NHS Grampian in 1983, I would like to acknowledge his 40 years of service and his significant contribution to the organisation in a number of roles across procurement, IT and e-health, modernisation, facilities and estates, before becoming a director in 2018 with responsibility for digital e-health, estates, facilities, infrastructure and capital planning, and also procurement. We wish you a long and happy retirement, Paul. Turning our attention to the papers being considered today, I would like to acknowledge those on the annual performance of our IJB partners, Finance and the Baird and Anchor in particular. With regard to the IJB annual performance reports, which are on agenda item 7, as we often reflect in these meetings, the delivery of health and care requires a network of partners working collaboratively to improve health outcomes. So it's important that we receive those performance updates from all 3 of the IJBs in Grampian. Finance, item 8, rightly remains a focus for us and other health boards. At this halfway point in the financial year, the size of overspend being incurred, which is above our revised target, remains a significant concern. With pay and non-pay pressures showing little sign of slowing, we welcome news that urgent recovery actions are underway, as well as detailed financial planning for 24-25. However, the scale of the financial challenge facing the board cannot be overstated, and always will be informed by Scottish Government budget announcement on the 19th of December. Lastly, I welcome the update relating to the Baird Family Hospital and Anchor Centre project, which is item 9, a topic which the board is continuing to monitor closely. Thank you for that. Thank you. Turn now to the minutes. Item 4, the minute of the meeting on the 5th of October 23. Can we agree the minutes is an accurate record, please? Thank you. And are there any matters arising from those minutes that aren't covered elsewhere? No, thank you. Thank you. Then we move then to item 5, which is the Chief Executive's report, and we turn to Caroline. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. As this is my final Chief Exec's report to the board, rather than the customary update on priority issues not covered elsewhere on the agenda, I would like to take the opportunity to reflect on my 3 years as the Chief Exec, so I hope you can bear with me. The foundation of everything that I have tried to do as a Chief Executive since November 2020 has been to work with colleagues and partners to create an environment where people feel empowered and supported to deliver the best care possible for the population of Grampian. Our colleagues' unwavering commitment and dedication is just remarkable and has been demonstrated time and time again through the pandemic and now as we continue to experience sustained pressures. I'm going to highlight a few initiatives that I think have been very impactful in my time as Chief Executive. The 8th Decade Paper as a catalyst for change, the investment we have made in the wellbeing to support colleagues through the We Care programme and also in new ways of reaching out and engaging with people. Doing the Ask Caroline Q&As have been a highlight for me. Colleagues ask a huge variety of topics and I found it invaluable for getting to the heart of day-to-day issues, keeping me very grounded and remembering what matters to people. My visits to services have also kept me linked into the day-to-day issues and have provided me with insights that have made it easier to make complex and competing decisions. The BPA Culture Matters survey in 2022 produced helpful data on how teams in nursing and midwifery and facilities and estates view their interactions with each other, with management, and about their motivations to work. The outputs from that, I believe, give us a good map for targeting further action to improve the working lives across the organisation. Pursuing Magnet, Alison's mentioned that, and pursuing Magnet accreditation for our nursing and midwifery colleagues is now having a measurable impact on our recruitment of internationally and new graduated nurses and retention of experienced staff, with the lowest level of nursing vacancies for several years in a context of increasing vacancies across the UK. I think that's an astounding achievement. Of course, an empowered workforce isn't just about initiatives and action plans. Our individual behaviours and interactions send signals all the time about the kind of organisation we aspire to be. Our partnership with staff-side colleagues demonstrates our values and behaviours, and I am so proud of its strength and resilience. This has undoubtedly helped us through some really challenging situations, which include the planning of industrial action earlier this year. I inherited a very strong set of working relationships with our partners in Aberdeen City, Aberdeenshire and Moray Councils, Aberdeen University, Robert Gordon's University and Nescol, the 3 health and social care partnerships, Scottish Ambulance Service, Police Scotland and the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. I would like to thank the leaders and colleagues in each of those organisations for their support to me, their patience with me, and to NHS Grampian as we build a truly whole system collaboration to tackle the underlying causes of ill health and create a sustainable health and care system. I believe that collaborative working within NHS Grampian and the health and social care partnerships is essential to realise the benefits of integration for the people of Grampian. We've been embedding systems leadership approach, focusing on outcomes and pathways rather than buildings and structures as the next step in the health and social care integration agenda. This is a huge cultural change programme, and the challenge has been amplified by the long tail of the pandemic, which requires us to reform while dealing with huge demands on our services. However, without reform, we will continue to use scarce resources in a reactive way to manage declining population health and put more and more pressure onto our workforce. Without reform and without joint partnership effort, particularly to direct more resources to enabling wellness, the system will become increasingly compromised in its core functions. Change is necessary to protect the health service for the future, and change will only be sustainable if we act together with our partners and maximise the impact of our joint resources. As a board, you will set the priorities of the organisation going forward, and I hope that the work on partnerships, collaboration and systems leadership over the last 3 years will give you a reference point and a body of evidence to build upon. Both of these priorities, empowering our workforce and harnessing the power of partnerships to achieve fundamental reform of our system, need clear strategic intent so we can keep our eye on the end goal. We also need to provide the clarity and reassurance of deliverable actions to show progress towards these goals. Engagement on the plans gives us confidence that we are prioritising the issues that matter to our fellow citizens and colleagues and help us to tell the story of our organisational journey. As a board, we've put huge effort into engaging and developing ambitious strategies and enabling delivery plans. And I think today's agenda is really strong evidence of that in action. Other areas of evidence that I would just like to reference would be the plan for the future, with its clear intent to rebalance our system to deal with population health challenges. The annual delivery plan 23 to 26, synthesising our local priorities with the national targets and priorities, so a 3-year plan, we've not achieved that before. The medium-term financial framework helping us predict and manage the very challenging public sector finance landscape, which we'll hear more about later on in the agenda from Alex. The workforce strategy, the climate change and sustainability strategy, and the digital strategy, which we're going to have an in-depth discussion about today, led by Paul. I'm proud that collectively we have found the capacity to engage on all of these plans and align them. This is a powerful framework to guide the board and the workforce over the short and medium term. I am confident that your collective efforts as a board and the leadership team to monitor, review and adjust these plans will ensure their continuing relevance. The challenges NHS Grampian is grappling with are not unique to this board and are well rehearsed in each leadership, partnership and operational meeting, board and committee meeting. I am certain that the organisational strength which I reflect on in this paper are equal to your task ahead, and I wish you and your new Chief Executive, Adam Caldwell's, every success. I have learned a lot working with this board and the 3 chairs in my time as Chief Exec, and I would like to thank you all for trusting in my leadership and for your support, constructive challenge and kindness to me. Give me a second. Finally, in every How Are We Doing report and each one of these Chief Exec reports, I have thanked colleagues for all the work that they do. And I repeat that again now with even more gratitude. Thank you for everything that you do. It's been my huge privilege and honour to work with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Thank you. You have done so much for us as an organisation. You've focused so much on people. You've helped drive us forward and set the direction for what we need to do next for a sustainable, forward-looking organisation. And the impact you have had has been huge. And really thank you for what you have personally given as well, your personal commitment and for the job and the role. And it's fantastic what you've done. So we really do wish you well as you move forward to Tayside, and come and see us sometime as well. And I think, you know, as we know what the priorities are moving forward, and it'll be great to have that connection with you as well, and thinking about what we need to do across the piece with other NHS boards as well to drive us forward. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'll open it to anyone else who wants to make a comment, please. Got lots of comments being put in the chat, Caroline, for your personal comments there. And I think you can have a read of those, what people have written to you personally there to thank you for everything you've done. Okay, thank you very much, Caroline. Thank you. And we look forward to your contribution this meeting then. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. With that then, and with messages appearing in the chat to Caroline, which obviously she will be able to read, we'll move on to item 6, which is the How Are We Doing report. And I'll turn to Alex Stephen to open us on this one, please. Alex.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just want to just give a brief introduction on this paper, and then I'll pass over to colleagues for questions. So we've done a lot of work over the last few months in relation to the performance framework and how we present performance to the organisation. And one of the parts of that framework is obviously the how are we doing report that we've got today. And I really don't want to underestimate the amount of work that colleagues have put in to get in this paper here today with the information contained in it. But you know, the performance journey we on in terms of how we deal with performance is certainly a journey, and we're working our way through that. So there are still changes that we would like to make, and there'll be formatting changes, etc., that we will work our way through. But one of the things that we have done on this performance report is to try and deal with the so what question a little bit more in the spotlight session. So we've issued guidance to execs around about what to try and get that so what question answered, which I think is something that the board were particularly interested in. This report focuses on the red areas that have been highlighted through the sort of risk rating system. But in future, we would be looking to bring green and amber reports to give a bit more balance in relation to the performance across the whole organisation. So, Chair, that was all I was going to say in relation to this report. My colleagues are all set up to answer any of the difficult questions you may have on the spotlight reports, and I'll leave it like that. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks ever so much for that, Alex. I will turn to colleagues then for those questions on the how we do report. Thank you, Sandy.
Yeah, just to echo Alex's point about the kind of, I know it sounds a bit cliched, but the journey that we've on in relation to performance reporting, and I think I'm sure colleagues on the board would agree with me that this is hugely improved and more informative than we've had in the past. And Alex is absolutely right. This issue about the so what question is really important, because I think you know, the structures and reporting and so forth in themselves do not necessarily improve performance. It is the so what question in relation to what actions have been taken to actually get us on the right track. I suppose one of the things, and I think I've written to Alex and Alan in relation to financial reporting, so I'll not repeat it later on in that report, Chair, but I think for me what would close the assurance loop would be where we see you know, what actions are being taken in relation to different aspects, and where they're not making a difference or turning performance around. Then there's the so what of, so what are we going to do about it in relation to that? You know, if something doesn't work and it's not working, what are we going to do? It's just to provide that extra bit of assurance. And I think we're getting there, and the spotlight reporting does help with that. We've got a little bit further to go, but I want to thank everyone involved in pulling this together, because it's a huge improvement in what we've had in the past.
Thank you, Sandy, for that. And I think, you know, we have been on a journey and continue to be on a journey to get these reports right, so we get the information we require in the format we require. So thank you for your comments on that one. Dennis, please.
Thanks, Chair. I think for me, I think the sort of reformatting has been, I think, extremely welcomed. But I just want to sort of say with Alex, in terms of getting this balanced approach, I mean, when do you envisage that we'll have this balanced approach in terms of moving away from just focusing on our red to our amber and green? And in terms of where we are and that overall vision that has been set out in that partnership working, how much of that influences where we are in terms of the so what? Because achieving that vision that I think Caroline has set out for us in the past is something that, you know, requires that partnership working. And I'm just wondering, you know, for me, in terms of the assurance, in terms of that direction that we're traveling in, when do you envisage that we can start to sort of see that balanced approach in terms of moving just from red to amber and green? Thank you.
Alex, do you want to comment?
Yeah, I'll maybe come in on the technical point about the green and amber, but maybe some of my colleagues could kind of think about the partnership approach. But one of the bits that we are looking, so what we've done this time is we've set a timetable for spotlights across the year to spread those across the year, so that we know that we're going to pick up on every area over the year. We did that for a couple of reasons, but the main reason for that was to give people a chance to program into their diaries when you would require that information. So we've set out a pretty structured process in regard to that. So for the next meeting, we will have green and ambers coming through. Dennis will be one of the things. But given the timing that we had this time, and we agreed to focus on the reds, and that's where we've got to on that. So I hope that gives you a bit of assurance around about that. On the wider partnership point, it's probably, I don't know if any of my colleagues have got any thinking on that they may wish to add to finish the response to that question.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. So just to add to that partnership, reading these papers, how we're doing report spotlights, I think what shines out is the importance of regional working to solve some of the key issues that we have here, and also local working with partners to actually move forward. And I think that shines through as you read the overall papers that we have in front of us today. And so maybe a question as well is, how can we as a board support that kind of work going forward as well, because that seems to be key to what we need to do in many of these areas. And having said that, I see Caroline's put her hand up, so before going to Joyce, I'll come to Caroline to see if she's going to respond to that one. Thank you, Caroline.
Thanks. So just to build on that, Alison, I think that we have a real opportunity with the knowledge and understanding we have, and with my knowledge and understanding of Grampian moving into Tayside, of where the opportunities lie for regional working to support the reality of how do we create sustainable services for the population of the North. And the other huge opportunity that I believe for the region of Grampian is through continuing to build on the North East Alliance, Population Health Alliance, and how that interfaces with the 3 CPPs to drive partnership working at all levels. So I think the foundations are there for both regional working in the North and also the increased focus on the population health agenda through the North East Alliance and the CPPs.
Thank you for that, Caroline. Thank you. So we look forward to developments in this area, I think, going forward. Joyce, please.
Thanks, Alison. Yeah, I'd like to thank the team for very much improved information now compared to a few years ago. We really do know what the situation is, and it's easy to understand and see at a glance. One of the things I'm aware of is that we're much better at keeping people informed about the situation with regards to waiting times. However, I wonder if we should now be moving a step further and asking people what they are doing to keep themselves as well as possible and prepare themselves and help their own situation, because in the future we are going to need people to be more aware of their own health and their own responsibilities for their own health. And we need to lead in this. So I think it's probably time to move to that point. And my second query is with regards to Paul and the cancer situation, 31 and 62 days. He's mentioned before that perhaps a way forward is to look at cancer separately from other SCAT aspects. And I wonder if we're supporting Paul in this, or if we're having that conversation somewhere else, or if we need to be having it. Thanks.
Thank you, Joyce. I'll turn straight to Paul to respond to that, please. Paul?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Joyce, for that question. I think the first one around how we could be more transformative in how we interface with not only our patients, but also our citizens who are not yet patients. So that citizen link obviously is work that Susan is leading on. But some of the work that we're doing with our pre-operative assessment, and hopefully Paul Allen, and I can see Stephen Bagley is here as well this afternoon, this morning, will sort of highlight how digital and AI and biofeedback and constant interfacing with patients can allow us to be much more in the room with patients who are waiting. So that whole thing around how we get somebody well is now able to be delivered in a much more prescribed way, specific for a patient. That sort of tailored approach for individuals. So whether it be weight management or secondary prevention of blood pressure and other risk factors. So that is something that's really taking on. And the second question, or the point, Joyce, that you raised around how we arrange our system. So our model is based on a historical perspective, but with some of the things that Caroline has mentioned already with the regionalisation of work, if we think about it, we have a population of 1.6 million in the north, roughly. Now we suddenly have, as a region, a very large volume and patient base. That allows us to really start thinking about separating but connecting different streams, whether they're cancer or non-cancer time critical, or the high volume, low complex but high acuity and low acuity streams. So there's around, and that's before you start getting into the chronic conditions. So suddenly we're able to be much more prescriptive and much more specific, but the population and the workforce allows us to manage those individual streams on a greater scale because of the workforce potential from 1.6 million citizens and 3 health boards. We can't do it as a single health board. And this is very similar to the approach that Scotland took back in 2017 when they established the major trauma centres. One of the arguments was, you have to have a certain amount of people before you have a specialist service, not a well-organised multidisciplinary team looking after patients with trauma. So we do absolutely have those opportunities, and I would welcome the support from everybody, which I think we already have in principle, to do just that, because without that, we will not be able to be responsive, adaptive to the individual streams of pathology clinical demand. And I think the last thing I think I've probably mentioned already in the biofeedback, or how we interact with patients. I think technology, AI, will be perfect for this whole thing. And I think that's the work that Paul Allen and Steve Bagley are very much leading on. I think we're going to have some really interesting things just shortly. And if you think about the adaptive radiotherapy that you've all been aware of, that's one example. If you think about appointments and scheduling, that's another appointment. There's some exciting work done around how clinicians can sign off results without having to sign off results automatically. So there's a whole stream of things that we've got available. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I think we'll leave that as a taster for the digital paper that we've got further on the agenda. So thanks for that. And I think you mentioned the commitment to regional working, and I think that's been a theme of this meeting already, hasn't it? How important that is. So that's something we need to take forward together, I think. But I'll turn to Susan to add comments to what you've just said as well, Susan.
Yeah, thanks very much. And Joyce, we've got a paper going to the Population Health Committee later this month around the activities that we're supporting in terms of supported self-management. I think the board previously have had updates around activity, around know who to turn to. We have reinstigated the work around making every opportunity count, working really closely with our partners to ensure that we have advice and support on income and financial challenges that individuals are facing. And we also have the Waiting Well programme, which is included in the How Are We Doing report, where we set ourselves an ambition of having supportive conversations with 8,000 patients this year, and currently we are sitting at just over 6,000. And a lot of the support that we are providing is around working with our community planning partners to ensure that our patients are connected into social support structures within their local communities. So very much joined up approach. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Susan. Thank you. Joyce, is that answering your questions?
Yes, I'm delighted to hear all of those things and look forward to hearing progress on all of them. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you. John, please.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm really pleased with seeing this, having been around the board for a few years. It does really feel like we can now drill down into the detail, but also look up and start to look across the strategic intent and then the work with partners. So well done getting us to this stage, and the intention to look at that collaborative work. I think somewhere I would like us to be able to get something quite specific in about how well are we doing in our partnership work, because we do have good relationships, but it would be good to be able to explore that element. And I think we should, because we've referenced various really important things like working in the north, working across our system. I think we should just make reference to the CPPs as well. I think that's probably meant, you know, coming through the alliance, etc., but specifically bringing them in, because seeing the performance report for ourselves, seeing it for the IJBs, it'd be interesting something similar around what the CPPs are doing, and then we start to get the whole picture there. So congratulations to all the executives getting us to this stage. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And that's obviously, you know, clear ideas there about moving forward. And I think this is a work in progress in many ways as well. And I think they're really important things to add to what we're doing and reflect on for moving forward into the new year as well. So thanks for those comments. Bert, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I would add my congratulations to everyone for the work done in getting us to this point. The comment and question I would like to put forward is very similar to what John has actually just spoken about, and that's the role of the community planning partnerships, you know, a much wider approach to how we're dealing with this. And I agree that the Alliance, North East Alliance, is an important part to play here. I'd like to understand a bit more about, you know, the governance of that. And where this fits in at the strategic level. It is important, but how do we know that what we're saying is actually happening? How do we know that at a very senior level the discussions are taking place, but when you come down a level or two into the operational arena that things are happening? What kind of assurance can we be given in relation to that? Thank you.
Thank you, Bert. Susan, are you best placed to respond to that?
Yes, and Bert, please keep me right if I'm not quite understanding the question. So in terms of the North East Population Health Alliance, the forum that's essentially creating a forum where we come together to where we've identified things that there is added value of working together on. So if I use the example this year of the Director of Public Health annual report, which set out the 4 challenges to population health, one of which was the higher cost of living. We undertook an evidence review about where we should be focusing our effort, and through our community planning partnerships, we've had conversations around the evidence, the good practice that is absolutely happening across the patch and capturing some of that, but hearing from our practitioners what they need to support them to enhance or scale up the efforts that they're taking. And a report is coming back to the North East Population Health Alliance, after which we will set out the actions that are taken. In terms of our contribution to the community planning partnerships, we have mapped that out in terms of, if we use the city, the contribution that we as a health and care system are making to the local outcome improvement plans, and ensuring that we've got the right capacity so we are able to deliver on those commitments. Each community planning partnership sets out their progress in an annual report, and clearly all of our staff contribute to that. And I think what John has highlighted is the work that we are trying to do at the moment, because as you can imagine, those reports come in at different time frames. What we are trying to do is pull that together to set out our collective contribution and demonstrate that we are being a good partner. So I hope that helps in terms of the question that you've asked.
Thank you, Susan. I think there's a general feeling and general support that community planning partnerships are really important, and we need to play an active part in them. And it's that question around the assurance that we are playing the active part. I think you've outlined there how it fits into the governance and where there are ways of checking up on that. But obviously it's an area that we can continue to work on as well through the Population Health Committee, which is an important role in this as well. So I will turn to John to add to this, I think.
Yes, just to supplement what Susan's saying, specifically on the governance part, Bert, there's been quite a lot of conversation around that, and there's been a very specific inclusion in the addendum which the Alliance has to its strategic agreement, which clarifies for the partners that the governance comes through them. So they're setting the priorities. The Alliance is picking those up, and like Susan's saying, doing that really important work of being a forum for working together very practically and meaningfully on the different items. But the governance sits explicitly with the member organisations, the key ones like the board here, with the IJB boards, the community planning boards. So hopefully that reassures you on that.
Thank you, John. Bert, I can't see you now. Bert, you reassured by those comments there?
Yeah, I think John's comments at the end there has specifically addressed the issue I had in my mind about governance of bringing all of this together. So thank you for that, Chair.
Thank you very much, Bert. And I can't see any other indications. Just a final question for me. I think for June, my question in the information we have here about nursing and agency work, and we're talking about the importance of transformational change being needed to workforce models. I suppose what the paper doesn't show us if that's something that we as a board can be working on, or whether that's something that needs a wider response to it. That doesn't come from the paper here. I wonder if June could elaborate on that, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think it's both streams there, Alison, in relation to we can do stuff locally. So, for example, work we've got going on in relation to learning disability nursing. And we are working with Open University at the moment. So we are employing people as a healthcare support worker, and they'll have a earn as you learn type model in place. So they will come in, be employed with us, do their pre-registration course via Open University, and will remain in employment as a registered nurse when completed. So that's just one example. These are longer term solutions, but we've kind of done all the short term stuff. So these are the things that we need to do now to ensure we've got that sustainable workforce. We need to employ people locally, grow them locally, and they will stay with us. So, and we're also influencing the Scottish Government around this. So there's, we're working with them, looking at things like nursing associates. How would that work in Scotland? Is there an opportunity there? Exploring that as executive nurse directors across Scotland. So there's many strands to this, and we continue to work on it. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. That's another example of where collaboration is needed then to be able to work locally and nationally to get the right outcomes to move forward. So thanks for that, June. Okay, I can't see any more indications on this paper then. We're asked to note the report and the areas highlighted within it. And obviously we've heard from the executive leads for a wider perspective as well. So can we agree we've noted it? Thank you. Thank you very much. Moving on then to item 7. the Integration Joint Board's annual performance reports, and a big thank you to everyone who's contributed to putting these reports together and presenting them to us today as well. Turning to the chief officers to present on these. Sandra, I think I'm turning to you first.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. We have Alison MacLeod, Angela MacLeod, and Sandra should be there as well. I think they're going to give a presentation showing an overarching position and then open it for any questions. So I'll hand over to Alison, I think. Is it yourself? For the slides?
It's Angela
Yes.
that's going to start.
Angela, yeah, that's great.
Thank you, and good morning all. Yes, I'll just share my presentation if it's okay. I'll maybe turn my camera off because I'm having some connection issues, so just want to make sure there's no disruption to the presentation. That's okay. And I'm hoping everyone's seeing that
Yes,
now.
thank you. Yes, thank you, we can.
Great. Thank you very much. So yes, good morning. We've been asked to come along today to present the annual performance reports for the 3 health and social care partnerships in Grampian, and this was for the last financial year 2022 to 2023. In the report to the board, there are links provided to each of the individual performance reports, which hopefully members will have had time to consider in advance of today's meeting. But we do appreciate there's a lot of information in these reports, which we won't have time to go through in all the detail, but we're certainly very happy for if anyone has any specific questions that we don't cover in our presentation, I'm very happy to be contacted out with the meeting. And as noted, colleagues from each of the partnerships, myself, Interim Strategy and Transformation Manager with Aberdeenshire Health and Social Care Partnership. And we also have Alison MacLeod from Aberdeen City and Sandra Gracie from Moray here today. Our aim is today to present as far as possible our collective contribution to how we support the Grampian-wide system of health and social care, and have tried to focus on those areas we feel would be of most interest to the board. Each of our respective annual performance reports have made their way through the appropriate governance processes within each partnership and approved by their respective integration joint boards for publication. And the board today is asked to note the progress being made. We thought it'd be useful just to set the context for our performance against the challenging environment in which we are operating. And these are, of course, particular challenges we identified as common to all 3 partnerships, which we're sure resonate with the board as well. So our demand is ever increasing, not only in volume, but in the level of need and complexity that we now find we're dealing with due to a number of factors, including demographics, but also in the legacy and recovery from the pandemic and the impact of, for example, cost of living crisis, particularly in relation to some of our most disadvantaged communities. Reducing budgets in real terms is an issue we'll face, along with challenges in the recruitment and retention of staff. This is a particular issue for us in the social care sector, particularly when comparing rates of pay in the job market of other industries. There are issues particular to Aberdeenshire and Moray, which can impact on provider sustainability and our in-house recruitment and retention through our rurality, our geography, travel costs, the cost of rural housing, and likewise specific challenges for city also associated with delivery of care in an urban setting, although we are seeing the impact of the real living wage. Apologies in advance for this very busy slide. It's just intended to try and articulate the landscape within which the health and social care partnerships operate and the demands on our resource at both national and local levels. At the centre of these are our strategic plans, which focus on or aim to focus on how we can improve outcomes for people through the design and delivery of an integrated health and social care service. So these each set out our vision for the health and social care partnerships and the key priorities that we will focus on. Underpinning this, we have a number of important supporting strategies and delivery plans which articulate locally how we intend to deliver against national strategy and policy. We also have our medium-term finance strategies, our commissioning plans and our workforce plans, through which we aim to have a common thread of how we will deliver against our overarching strategic priorities. Our annual performance reports are required by legislation to demonstrate our progress against delivery of our strategic plans. But really key to their successful delivery is being cognizant of how our strategic plans also align with the respective strategic plans of NHS Grampian and our local authority partners, and providing us with the opportunity to see how our mutual priorities and ambitions can be achieved collaboratively, and continuing the whole system approach, which has been so integral, and particularly through the pandemic and beyond. Looking in particular at NHS Grampian's plan for the future, this will be a slide you're familiar with. This is a diagram we've borrowed from the NHS Grampian delivery plan, and it illustrates the specific areas of accountability for the IGBs, working in partnership with NHS Grampian, our communities and other partners, in delivering against the strategic priorities, but with particular accountability in relation to primary and community care, mental health services and health inequalities. The three health and social care partnerships were closely involved, continue to be closely involved with planning colleagues in the development and implementation around this 3-year delivery plan, and we continue to seek and maximise opportunities to work collaboratively, particularly where there are shared and significant sustainability challenges, for example, as illustrated by the Grampian-wide General Practice Vision programme currently underway. So the partnership's annual performance reports cover all our services, including the ones where there is sole accountability to the IGBs. But the focus of this presentation is to be in those areas where there is shared accountability with the NHS Board. Just for the framework for how our performance is measured and benchmarked nationally, there are 20 national health and wellbeing indicators that are used to measure health and social care partnerships progress towards the 9 national health and wellbeing outcomes. These outcomes provide the sort of overarching strategic framework for health and social care partnerships in planning and the delivery of health and social care services, with a focus on improving the experience and quality of services for people, as well as the difference that integrated health and social care services should make. In addition to these 20 indicators, which include both outcome indicators and data indicators derived from organisational systems, there are an additional 6 ministerial strategic group indicators that all partnerships continue to be monitored against. So as noted, all health and social care partnerships are measured on these, and they feature in each of our annual performance reports in terms of our progress over the last year. I'm just going to hand over to Alison now, who will pick up for the rest of the presentation.
Thanks, Angela. So this slide shows 4 of the Ministerial Steering Group, or MSG, indicators in relation to emergency admissions, unscheduled care bed days, A&E attendances and delayed discharge bed days. The green line is Grampian and the blue line is the Scottish average. The last 4 financial years are shown for identification of trend. As you can see, the number of emergency admissions in Grampian dipped significantly lower than the Scottish average in 2020-2021. And although it has climbed again, it remains below the Scottish average. For the other 3 indicators, the lines for Grampian follow a very similar pattern to the Scottish average, but unscheduled bed days and delayed discharge bed days are generally lower than the Scottish average. We would suggest these graphs indicate the performance of the partnerships in relation to diverting demand and improving flow. Further recent analysis of unscheduled care benchmarking data undertaken by NHS Scotland compared unplanned admissions and delayed discharges between 2023 and 2022. This indicated that across Grampian we have performed well in supporting people in the community. In order to achieve this performance, the 3 partnerships are concentrating on programmes of work that create capacity in community services to both avoid admission to hospital and ensure there are destinations and support services for all patients to be discharged to as soon as they are ready to leave hospital. All partnerships have a focus on keeping people at home where it is safe to do so and improving the processes that enable prompt discharge. Examples of services which help admission avoidance are City's Stay Well, Stay Connected programme, Aberdeenshire's virtual community wards and Murray's daytime unscheduled care service. In addition, each partnership is progressing its primary care improvement plan, which includes the introduction of services such as community treatment and care hubs. The Pan-Grampian Social Care Sustainability Programme is an initiative to improve discharge rates and timescales. Each partnership took the lead on one area, Aberdeenshire on risk assessed care, Moray on discharge to assess, and City on the increased use of technology enabled care, and then shared learning with others. Next slide, please, Angela. These graphs show the 3 of the national indicators relating to the quality and safety of service provision and patients and clients having a say in their care. Unfortunately, data for the national indicators is not available on a Grampian basis, so this time you have 4 lines, blue for Aberdeen City, orange for Aberdeenshire, grey for Moray, and yellow for the Scottish average. Some of these indicators are only reported biannually, so the latest reporting year is 2021 to 22. It's evident that the trends we are seeing locally reflect the national trend. In the case of these indicators, we can only show 2 years' worth of data due to changes in survey wording and methodology, which means direct comparisons are not possible for previous years. Again, the trending in all of these graphs are broadly similar, with the Grampian Health and Social Care Partnerships largely performing above the Scottish average, which in the case of these indicators is a positive position. The exception to this is in relation to the feeling safe indicator. This indicator is a very subjective one, and it's thought the responses provided relate to factors beyond what is necessarily within the remit of health and social care. We continually seek to engage and understand the lived experience of our communities and people who use our services to augment our understanding of patient experience and inform areas for improvement. Some examples of this include the significant engagement work at community level by Aberdeenshire in developing the INCH and D-side strategic needs assessments. The further development in the city of its locality empowerment groups as a means of facilitating engagement with communities, and the development of the Wellbeing Pledge in Moray. In terms of improving access to services, in Aberdeen City we have developed a website and leaflets under the banner of Agile, which stands for Aberdeen Guide to Independent Living and Enablement. These provide information for those seeking services and support. As part of the implementation of the Medication Assisted Treatment, or MAT standards, Aberdeenshire have created Step In, a new pathway for people to access services quickly and at a time that is suitable for the individual. Next slide, please. The final 3 national indicators that we will cover today are in relation to prevention, self-care, and shifting the balance of care. The colours are the same as the last slide, and again, one of these can only be reported for 2 financial years. The trends for all indicators are very similar. In relation to the number of adults able to look after their own health, whilst on a downward trend, all 3 partnerships are well above the Scottish average. The proportion of the last 6 months of life spent at home or in a community setting is plateauing, but again, all 3 partnerships are well above the Scottish average. In the case of adults feeling supported, the partnerships are not all performing well in relation to the Scottish average. Due to the years covered by the report, this may be due in part to the impact of the pandemic, but could also be as a result of increasing demand and the fact that we are now only able to support those with the highest needs. Some difficult decisions have to be made in relation to discharging people home when they are perhaps not as ready as they might be, or where the most appropriate care package is not yet available and interim arrangements are relied on. For these indicators, a key area of work for all 3 partnerships is our vaccination programmes. Each partnership also has health improvement and wellbeing teams who undertake a number of support programmes in the community that help with the prevention and self-care agendas, both for physical and mental wellbeing. In Aberdeen City, our community treatment and care hub, located within the new Get Active Northfield Sports facility run by Sport Aberdeen, is proving popular, and Aberdeenshire's Out of Area Complex Care project, in response to the Coming Home implementation report, seeks to enhance the current services, reducing the need for out of area placements and eradicating delayed discharges for people with learning disabilities. And final slide, please. There's a lot of essential work that goes on beyond what we need to do to improve performance against the national and MSG indicators. This is often hidden work that nonetheless consumes considerable resource. We often refer to this work as enabling the rest of the operational and transformational activity. The key areas in relation to this are, firstly, unpaid carers. It's estimated that unpaid carers divert around almost £11 billion worth of demand away from mainstream services in the UK. It's therefore very important that we can provide support to unpaid carers to continue in their caring role. The Carers Scotland Act 2016 was implemented in April 2018 and required each health and social care partnership to develop and implement its own carer strategy. Murray have just published their carer strategy entitled Recognised, Valued and Supported, and will now be moving on to implementation. Similarly, the Aberdeen City Carer strategy was refreshed in 2022 and implementation is underway, with the first annual report going to IGB in February. Aberdeenshire are currently in the process of tendering to commission a range of supports and resources for both adult and young carers. A specific project under their Social Care Sustainability Programme is centred on improving access to support for unpaid carers. The second enabler is tackling inequality. It's a known fact that those experiencing inequality often have greater need for health and social care services. A lot of work is being undertaken to understand and respond to the particular needs of disadvantaged groups. IGBs have the same public sector equality duty as other public bodies, and each health and social care partnership publishes their equality outcomes and mainstreaming frameworks and reports biannually to the Equality and Human Rights Commission. Workforce is a key enabler, and all three health and social care partnerships experience challenges in relation to the recruitment and retention of staff, and this is reflected on our strategic risk registers. We have each developed our workforce plans, which are aligned to NHS Grampian's workforce plan, and are in the process of implementing the action plans in relation to these. Using digital technology to support the redesign of service delivery is crucial to enable the partnerships to do more, or at least the same, with less budget, helping to ensure sustainability of service provision for the future. In Aberdeen City, we are working in partnership with Microsoft to identify ways to achieve efficiencies through the expansion of digitisation. Aberdeenshire have been fortunate to recruit a digital project manager this year who is leading on the development of a Shire digital strategy and making links across the strategic delivery plan work streams to ensure digital technology opportunities are maximised. All health and social care partnerships are increasing the implementation of technology-enabled care as a means of reducing the cost of care packages and ensuring sustainability of future service provision. We are also making arrangements to prepare for the switch over from analogue to digital in 2025, ensuring the continued provision of telecare services. In terms of finance, each health and social care partnership's chief finance officer submits annual medium-term financial frameworks or strategies for approval by their respective IGBs. These are fully aligned to the strategic plans and are developed in collaboration with NHS Grampian and local authority finance colleagues. The impact of the current and future predicted overspending in the prescribing budgets is challenging the partnerships in terms of balancing their budgets, and there's a real danger of service delivery being impacted as a result. Each partnership is currently agreeing transformation activity to achieve balanced budgets for both this financial year and next. Thank you for listening, and we'll be happy to try and answer any questions that you may have. The chief officers of each of the partnerships are on the call today as well, so hopefully they'll be able to help with any tricky questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation. It was really useful. When I'd read the individual reports, it was clear that there were local differences and responding, of course, to local priorities, and that's obviously how it needs to be to have the best results across the piece. But also that collaboration is really important across the whole of the Grampian area. And when you spoke in the presentation, that collaboration was really brought out as well. So thank you for that. So we've got a really good balance of local work plus collaborative work as well. So thank you, Alison, for that. I'll turn now to Ian, please, first of all. Ian.
Thanks, Alison. Yeah, and thank you for a very helpful and informative presentation to back up the helpful and informative reports. It's a very specific question. It's on on the slide you had NI9, which was the percentage of adults supported at home who say they feel safe, or words to that effect. I wondered if there was any information beyond that, if that's the right expression, about what makes people feel safe, or equally what makes people feel unsafe.
Thank you, Ian. I saw Alison nodding when you asked him that question, so I don't know if Alison's best place to answer that.
Well, I'll make a start, and if anybody else wants to jump in, please feel free. So that is the subjectiveness that I was referring to in the narrative of the presentation. There's a whole load of factors that make people feel safe, and it's not just in terms of their health and well-being. So you know, there could be community safety issues, there could be crime issues. So although there is a description of what feeling safe means in terms of the survey that's done of people's own interpretation is brought into that, and I'm sure if we asked anyone on the call today what makes them feel safe, we would get a variety of different answers. So it's very difficult to be able to give a definitive response to that.
Thank you. I think Simon's going to add to that, Alison, as well. I think Simon's just put his hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Alison's covered that really, really well. I think it comes down to the support networks that people have, whether they have family living close by, whether they're networked and integrated into their community, and how a community behaves. And we know that there are particular communities that are extremely cohesive and supportive, and therefore folk will feel kind of valued within their community and will feel safer. And I think that there is an opportunity from the health and social care partnerships to continue to work with communities around that community cohesiveness, because we can't deliver everything to everybody. And I think that supporting communities to support themselves and to support their community members who may have particular needs is a key plank of our strategies. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison and Simon. Is that helpful, Ian?
Yes, thank you both.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you both as well. Sandy, please.
Thanks, Chair. Just an initial comment is that that was an extremely helpful report on the 3 IJBs, and I think in my 5 years with the Health Board, that's probably the best report that's given me a very strong sense of not only everything that's happening at a local level, but also the work that's going on across IJBs to try to deal with the pressures and challenges that we all face across the Grampian area. I suppose turning it on its head, I think we're hearing from the 3 IJBs how hard they're working to bring about change. And NHS Grampian is a key partner in that. Is NHS Grampian doing enough to support you?
Thank you, Sandy. That links to the conversation we'd had in the earlier paper as well. Who'd like to answer that? Who'd like to comment? Is there being enough done to support the IJBs? I've got Pamela and Sandra both indicated, so I'll turn to them in that order. No, Sandra now. Sandra, Sandra, just comment.
So I think Pam was the way to start, Chair.
All right, was she? Sorry, the hand just went down all of a sudden.
Yeah,
so Pamela and then Sandra then, sorry.
Beg your pardon, Chair, my hand, I can't, you see what's up or down, I'm afraid. So no, thanks very much for that comment, Sandy. I think as Caroline articulated at the beginning, that we have certainly, so I've been in post for 2.5 years, just over 2.5 years now. I certainly feel that we're working as part of a whole system. I think that is both in terms of when we look at the plan for the future, I think it was really helpful this year that we were able to articulate where's the areas where the partnerships and the IJBs have the lead on and can help to support that whole agenda. Where do we have a joint responsibility to work together, and where it sits very firmly in the NHS parameter, which was a slide that was put up. And then also, I think, then the North East Alliance allows us to stand back and look at those more population-based issues. So I think we are in a really good method of partnership working. I think it becomes more stressful as the system is under stress right across, due to, and I think it was articulated, the complexity needs coming through, and also the financial position. But that does actually mean that the requirement for partnership working becomes even more important. So I think that we've got a really good, strong basis. What we need to do is make sure that we're all working together, but actually we support all our colleagues across both health and social care and into other partner agencies, that they actually feel part of that joint team. So I think that continued message around we all play into it and we all have a contribution to make, but we're actually supportive across that network. So in summary, yes, I do think we feel supported and part of that network.
Thank you, Pamela. The other hands have gone down now, so I'll read into that Pamela's answered on behalf of all the chief officers, and I've got nods for that. So thank you for that. Sandy, that's helpful.
I think that is helpful. I mean, I think with the nature of the challenges that everyone's having to grapple with, we just have to have an honest, challenging conversation. So if any part of the system that people rely on isn't fully playing their part, we need to have those discussions. I just wanted to check that that's okay, because otherwise it feels as if the reporting and the assurance is one way, and it just can't be like that if we're going to work together.
Yeah, I think there's an ongoing theme of this board meeting this morning as well, isn't there? Dennis, please. Dennis.
I think you're absolutely right, Chair. I think the ongoing theme is the collaboration, the partnership, and that sort of vision for the future. And I think, echoing maybe what Sandy said, about the report being probably one of the best I think we've seen in terms of how it was presented, gives us that sort of sense that we are in, I think, a very positive direction in terms of being on that pathway. But one of the areas for me is still about, and it goes back maybe at Joyce's earlier question about how do we engage more with the patient, the population, the citizen, to take more control of what they can do in terms of that sort of preventative element. And I'm just wondering, in terms of if someone maybe could elaborate a wee bit more on the GP vision strategy that's been taking place, and in terms of how we get that message out to that wider population as to that sort of social prescribing, or that element of trying to keep people away from the front door in terms of the acute services. So I'm just wondering if perhaps someone could maybe elaborate a bit more on that partnership element of working with our GP partners. Thank you.
Thank you. Was anyone able to elaborate on that, please? Pamela, thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. So I think there's two aspects of it. So certainly being in part of the primary care vision, primary care GP practice vision work. One of the main conversations that's come about that is about the continuity of relationships we have with primary care and with patients and the public. So it's really important that we get back to that holistic view that GPs and GP practices and the staff working around that are able to work with patients and with their local residents to actually look at preventative work, to look at how we can maintain people in the best care that we possibly can. So that has definitely been a theme coming through. And one of the things that has been, I think that the general practice has felt over the sort of preceding couples of years is they've become into a very individual interaction with patients as opposed to that more holistic working. And so to achieve that, I think across all practices, and this came out in the vision again, is how do we work? They work as part of a system. So how can they link to other supports and be, so people come to the GP practice for what the GP practice is best at, but how do they link into communities on how that can support people more widely. And I suppose I would certainly take from a flavour from, and I know this will be discussed maybe in different guises across the 3 health and social care partnerships, but we're certainly working very closely around place-based approach. So that is working when, if you look at the shaping the future around health and well-being, that's very much working about how do you bring all the assets in a community, working with, for us, it certainly is a council, is a sort of umbrella enabler around that, to develop that place-based approach where we're talking to communities about how they can take their own responsibilities and maximise their own assets. And then we see, as a health and social care partnership IJB, how we play into that agenda and contribute to it. But it is community owned through a place-based approach. So I think certainly that's the way I would see that going forward through those 2 strands. Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela. Susan, you indicated, do you want to add to that? Was that?
Yeah, thank you very much. And board members will be aware that Luann is undertaking a piece of work for us at the moment to ensure that we engage with our communities on an ongoing basis, working collaboratively with community planning partnerships and health and social care partnerships. There will be a paper coming to the board in March, which sets out our proposed way forward that will, I guess, provide the connects to the pieces of work that Pam helpfully outlined. Thanks.
Thank you, Susan and Pam. Dennis, is that helpful?
It's extremely helpful, and I'm hoping that the paper in March will also indicate how this is being communicated to that wider sort of population in order that, you know, they can participate, but, you know, also understand where we are and how they can actually engage. So it's important we get that communication right. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that guidance. Thank you, Dennis. Caroline.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, colleagues, for the presentation. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I wanted to take the opportunity, Alison, to formally thank colleagues, particularly the chief officers across Murray, Shire and City. So maybe not in the right order, Simon, Pam and Sandra, for the work that has underpinned that performance report that was presented today, and also to the chairs and vice chairs and the IJBs for their support and tolerance of NHS Grampians' continued drive for systems leadership and the implementation of portfolio as a leadership construct. I think that has most definitely enabled us to understand each part of the system and have ownership across historical boundaries of organisations. So I think, building on some of the questions that have been asked, I'm really keen to ensure that going forward, as the financial constraints become more and more impactful across each of our individual organisations, what would be the advice of the chief officers and indeed other colleagues around the table of how do we prevent siloed thinking to manage the things that directly are our responsibility, as opposed to the whole system leadership thinking that we've been doing to make sure that we continue to use our services most effectively for the benefit of the population. I think it's entirely human nature when we're under pressure to think about the things that we are accountable for as NHS Grampian Board or as an IJB and as the accountable officers within those statutory bodies. But I'm really keen to know, particularly from the chief officers, if they have any thoughts on how we could just guard against reverting to siloed ways of working.
That's a really big question. It requires a lot of thoughtful answer, I think, as well. So I'll just ask the chief officers to answer with a pointer to things we should be developing in the future rather than to elaborate at this time. So pointers from you, and I've got Simon and Sandra with their hands up, please. Simon.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for the question, Caroline. I'm sweating already. I feel like it's a big exam question. So just a few things. I think that the more that we can align our aims and objectives, I think that's really helpful. And I think we've done a lot of that, and I think we've used the the place and the pathway kind of concept framework, people place pathway framework across our planning strategies, and I think that's been really helpful. At the same time as recognizing that we've got local variation. I think community planning and strengthening those networks is a really key plank, because even NHS Grampian and the IJBs will not be able to succeed alone. The portfolio approach you mentioned, Caroline, I think that's been a real strength, certainly in getting rid of some of those historical boundaries. And I think that's allowed us to understand the positives and also the potential unintended consequences much better. I think we need to make sure that we keep a really close eye on the developments around the National Care Service. I think there are opportunities starting to emerge in that to strengthen integration, and there's certainly talk about some reformation of the 2014 Public Bodies Act. I think the strong links that exist between NHS Grampian and the 3 local authorities facilitates the ability of the IJBs to operate in what is a complex environment, and the North East Alliance as an example of that. And I think the last bit I'd say is I think we need to keep our foot on the gas around the preventative agenda and be doing that together. I think that's incredibly important. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. There's lots of pointers there about future work. I see Sandra's put her hand down again, so I think Simon's answered for you both as well. So thank you for that, and that's obviously makes us think about what we're doing moving forward. Thanks, Caroline, for the question. John, please.
Thank you. Two points. First one is that the presentation was really, really good. One bit that came across with the comparison to Scotland in terms of the national indicators, great that we're better than Scottish average. I think in future iterations of this, we need to think about where the Scottish trend is going, because if it's declining overall and we're, if just to paraphrase it, sort of not as bad as others, that might not be okay. So we just need to dig underneath that a wee bit and consider where we're going as a whole. But really good presentation, thank you. And not to rehearse what's been said, but it's really good that we're having this theme, like you're saying, Alison, and the conversation. I think to add to what's been said, we need to reflect on the whole system governance and make sure that those of us that are around committees or other IJBs or community planning partnerships do that bit of joining up. The alliance is really important, but it's got to have that governance link. And we have worked quite hard over the last year to try and make that happen. So what I'm seeing is some really good assurance that the executives are joined up and going beyond simply aligning things, but actually doing planning together, etc. I think those of us who are kind of non-execs around this need to have a think about what we need to do to support that, and take it forward as well. So not that we can answer that, but it's almost a supplement to what Caroline's saying in terms of doing the how. I think we've all got the right intent here, and I think we'll avoid retreating under all these pressures into our silos, but we're going to have to find ways that practically we can contribute as non-execs, and I'd put that as an ask of ourselves, if you like. Thank you.
No, I think that's really helpful, John. I think that there's a clear direction here as well in what we're doing, and the pointers from yourself there and from Simon that are really helpful about how we can actually build on what we've done so far and move forward in the appropriate way. So thank you to everyone for the comments, and again, thank you to Caroline for the question there. Before we close this item, I'd just like to say thank you to Sandra McLeod in particular, because this is also Sandra's last meeting with us, as she's also moving on to NHS Tayside. So just wanted to take this opportunity to thank Sandra personally as well for all the work she's done for locally and across the Grampian area as well in the last few years. So thank you, Sandra. Thank you. Okay, for this paper we have series of recommendations around assurance and future reporting that is outlined in the papers. Can we agree those recommendations, please?
Agreed.
Thank you. Recommendations agreed. And that moves us on to item 8, which is the NHS Grampian financial position. I think the concerning reality of our financial position has been set out clearly in the papers we've had in front of us. So I'll turn to Alex Stephen now to give more detail about that and also to outline some of the steps being taken to manage this as we can. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, Chair. NHS Grampian continues to find itself in a challenging financial position due to continuing operational pressures and high levels of inflation impacting on costs. Whilst inflation levels are reducing, the impact is still being faced on our budgets, and of course next financial year we will see the full year impact of these inflationary pressures. As a result of these pressures, our forecast overspend for this year was increased to £49.9 million, and as noted in the report, this is above the target set by the Scottish Government of £42.9 million. Since the forecast has been increased, the Chief Executive have implemented measures to recover the financial position back to the agreed target. The implementation of these measures requires a careful assessment of the implications on service delivery, staffing and performance, and we're closely monitoring the impact of these actions to determine whether we can reduce the forecast. Looking forward to 2024-25, the financial position at NHS Grampian will also be challenging, with cost reductions and savings required on a recurring basis. The Chief Executive team have been working on establishing the savings target and identifying the savings which will be required in order to close the budget gap. This savings target will be in excess of what NHS Grampian has delivered previously. The budget strategy for this year will build on the medium-term financial framework for the current year, and we are working on savings coming forward under the following themes. We'll be looking for our service directors and portfolio executive leads to develop saving plans for their own areas. We will work corporately on 2 or 3 major saving programmes, which will cover the whole organisation. We'll continue to develop our approach to value sustainability, linking into national improvement projects wherever possible. And we will further develop our work and approach in reviewing pathways of care in order to make these pathways sustainable from a financial and staffing perspective. Again, staffing, clinical care and service performance will be paramount in considering these options. The Chief Executive team are working hard to develop savings options and will be providing more information on our budget strategy at the Finance Seminar planned with the Board on the 16th of January. We are also looking at how we can involve the health and social care partnerships in our discussions, which picks up on some of the themes from today, given the financial challenges they are facing and also the potential implications to the whole health and social care system. Chair, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Alex, and you've really outlined the important situation that we're in at the moment and the work being done across the piece to respond to this. I suppose just a quick question from me in relation to this. The paper itself doesn't give us a sense of timescales or particular targets within any area. Could you maybe give us assurance that this is being worked at pace to get solutions and ideas put into practice as quickly as they can be? Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, and in terms of the recovery actions and some of the actions that we've taken just now, those will have impacts next year as well. So we're already looking at that. So it's essentially when we're considering what this year's actions are, but in relation to next year's actions, we are working on at pace with that. I've met with the directors and portfolio executive leads of the large services, and we've worked through that and looked at what provisional savings targets might be. We won't know the full level of the savings targets until the 19th of December once we get the indication from the Scottish Government on the level of funding. But yeah, I can give you assurance that we are working on that, and on the 16th of January we hope to be able to show some of that work to the board.
Thank you, Alex. Appreciate that. Thank you. Dennis, please.
Thanks, Chair. Again, very challenging times, and I think, Alex, you've set that out. Maybe a couple of points. First one is there are certain elements of what we do is out with our control, and certainly out with your control, and that is like that prescribing element, and I'm just wondering at what stage we're at in terms of conversations with the Scottish Government in terms of how maybe every board look at this sort of increased prescribing costs across the piece, and that's not just affecting obviously NHS Grampian in terms of what we do in the acute medicine side, because it obviously impacts on the primary care as well. But my other question, Chair, is that how or what assurance can you give us that in terms of reaching any reduction in spending and looking at that, I suppose it's a needs must, we have to. What assurance can you give us that it's not going to compromise patient care? And if it is going to compromise elements of patient care, what elements of that care do we need to be aware of? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dennis. Alex, or Adam's coming in, I think, first on that one. Adam.
Thanks very much, Chair. Thanks, and I think you're at the very heart of, the key question that we all worry away at from every bit of the organisation, whatever role you do, and we balance all the aspects of our governance. So we are balancing quality with cost all the time. If we came forward with something that just stopped something and didn't address anything in quality, that wouldn't be something that we would progress. So it sounds very trite, but it absolutely captures it well. We need, in this transformation that we do, things to be better, and that would be all dimensions of quality, so the 6 dimensions of quality that we use, as well as a terrible word, cheaper, but more affordable. So we're working collectively on that sense of how do you design a system that has that sustainability. So I will take us back to the plan for the future that sets out very, very clearly the spirit of what we need to capture, where we create a sustainability. We absolutely balance the treatment with our well-being, and the opportunity for us to change the dimension of cost against prevention is key to what we do. And I think the hardest thing is getting all the timing lines to line up. So some of the things happen at a slightly slower pace than others. So there's absolutely no intention to diminish quality or to do any of the things that would cause harm, and that would not be in our plan to do it. So we need to absolutely achieve that dimension of balancing quality in an affordable framework that we can do. And maybe just a small comment on prescribing as an example, that sits really well with that sense of prevention. So lots and lots of prescribing is all about prevention, both primary and secondary prevention. But again, if we can change the tide of how the population is, and that's lots of the comment that we've had throughout the board meeting today, then we can start to change that dimension of our gross spend. So that's a very high level answer, Dennis, but that is the intent, and that's what we're absolutely tasked with as an executive team, and then all of the teams that operate throughout the system in health and social care. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Adam. Paul, are you coming in on this as well?
If I may, please, Chair, because I think the question that's been asked is really interesting, and I would sort of ask colleagues to just think of it slightly differently, particularly in the context of earlier commentary. What we have now is an opportunity to rethink and reimagine the integration of delivering care, so that the running costs and the operational costs and the unit costs are very different. Trying to do high quality care in a system which is doing time critical care, cancer care, and every other type of care that you can think of that requires a hospital setting is actually very, very difficult. If we were able to differentiate and diverge flow to specific centres and services built specifically for that function, the costs of those things become very different because the workforce becomes very different. The models become very different. There is a significant inbuilt efficiency of that disaggregation, but at a large scale, which is what we have the opportunity to do with a large population across the whole of the North. So that's one thing. And the other thing I think around equality is, you know, the work done through the Centre for Sustainable Delivery, the Modernising Patient Pathway Programmes, the Realistic Medicine, the Value-Based Healthcare, the Atlas of Variation, all of these things are really helping to guide where focus and quality needs to be considered. So there are, you know, there's a very good framework, but I would suggest there's a very significant opportunity to actually deliver more with not a significantly reduced cost base if we imagine things differently. Thanks.
Thank you, Paul. Mark, were you going to comment on this as well?
It's a slightly different thing. I'll let Sandy go first. He had his hand up first.
Right, Sandy, I'll come back to Dennis first. But Dennis, those comments from Paul and Adam helpful?
Yeah, I find it incredibly helpful, and again, I find it really quite reassuring. And I think especially what you're saying, Paul, in terms of how we need to sort of move forward in terms of we can't continue to do the same. Otherwise, we're just going to continue to probably increase the cost element and not get a good return. The only question that hasn't been answered is the dialogue with Scottish Government in terms of, you know, the extortionate, the acceleration of prescribing costs, because it's impacting in every health board, and I'm just wondering at what level those conversations are. But no, I feel very reassured, Chair, from the answers given both by Adam and Paul. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. I think Caroline's just going to comment on that last point of yours. Caroline?
Yeah, Dennis, just to confirm that the issue that you raise in regards to prescribing impacting on all health boards and indeed integrated joint boards is I would say pretty much now a standing agenda item with board chief execs. Alison would be able to comment on the dialogue in the board chairs meeting, and I know that from Alex, the directors of finance are working through all issues that we believe are impacting across Scotland and how can we work together to address the national budget deficit as a collective group of territorial and national health boards. So prescribing is absolutely part of the conversation.
Thank you, Caroline. And Nick, are you adding to that?
Yeah, I'll just add some weight behind Caroline in terms of it is also very high up and actively discussed in the professional agenda, whether that's at the Scottish Association of Medical Directors or Nurse Directors, and the dialogue around, you know, how medicines approval work, how cost effectiveness is discussed, how implementation of very high cost drugs, all of these are really active conversations about how we do that. Because, you know, as Adam has set out, is that, you know, we're really focused on these 6 dimensions of quality, and each one of them, if it's done right, actually reduces cost and improves whether that's safety or effectiveness. But the bit we need to try and avoid is that the cost goes up and we don't see the gain for that, because, you know, the challenge is the cost has to go down. So really actively discussed, and you'll also see it's discussed on a wider than Scottish basis in terms particularly around high cost drugs. That's very active.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you for that clarification to Dennis's issue. Thank you. Sandy, please.
Just a couple of issues. I mean, firstly, thanks for this really helpful report. It's very full and it's very candid, and that's what we need. I can't share your reassurance, Dennis, I'm afraid. I just make one or two comments. In terms of the need for transformation, transformative change for a sustainable system, I mean, Caroline brought in her vision a few years back, and I think we've all signed up to that. Paul's talking about the need for transformation as well. I mean, there's never been any disagreement about that. Simon, at every IGB, you always remind the IGB that we really need to go down that route, and we need to make some difficult decisions to be able to move ahead. I suppose just looking at how how the process has been looked at. I'm conscious of, for example, we're going to identify a program management office to support the value and sustainability plan. But my understanding is that the program management team and program manager, perhaps those posts weren't filled that long ago, that the value and sustainability group only meets once a month. So we're in a very difficult position. So that group will only meet perhaps 2 or 3 times now before the end of the financial year. And I note that the chief executive has written to exec leads asking them to implement the changes that they've got responsibility for. Just to throw out a challenge, at a debt running at £5 million a month, have we got enough urgency?
Thank you, Sandy. I'll turn back to Alex for that one, please. Alex?
Yeah, we certainly, we've got enough urgency. Sandy, we've got the finance agenda as a standing item on our chief executive team every week. So we are constantly looking at what we can do in relation to reducing costs. And you know, we're working as hard as we can to pull this stuff together. Until we get to the 19th of December, though, we won't know what level of savings target that we need to meet, because it'll be one of the big implications of that is the level of settlement that comes forward from the Scottish Government. So once we know that, then we can really start moving in relation to that. The value and sustainability programme, ideally we would have had those people in place sooner than what we have. I acknowledge that, but we now have got that full team in place, and they're picking up speed and developing that programme as quickly as they can. We need to go across the whole organisation in relation to value and sustainability, and we're linking in with colleagues in the GAPF arena around about that. And we're also looking at what we can do, because there's already a very well established national programme around value and sustainability, and we get regular information from those groups, and we assess that information locally and determine whether there's any value that can be driven from that as well. So we do have a programme in place. We were working our way through it, and it's certainly very high up the chief executive team agenda.
Thank you, Alex. And Paul indicated as well. Do you want to expand there?
A little bit, if I may, again, and I think Sandy's challenge is right. But I think one of the things that we've got to be mindful of is that not only do we need to have police and our services and our teams buying into this, we need to get them to own this, so it's not just a process to achieve a reduction for March 24 or March 25. Now that takes a little bit of time, because what we're doing here is very, very significant, and whilst it may not be present in the data currently, but already within the last 4 months, there is no medical consultant locum being appointed without formal processing through the direct engagement. There is no now connection from services to agencies without going through the front desk, which is our locum desk. There is no default allowance of a rate beyond 10% from framework. And only at the end of last week was a communication given to shared rather with our medical leadership system to say that beyond midnight to 8 o'clock, locum rates will be severely reviewed and changed. So just one example in many where we've not only got the buy-in, but embracement and ownership from people that this is the right thing to do. And I think that's what's going to see the outcome in 24-25, not necessarily 22-23. So it does take time, I'm afraid, because these aren't new problems. We've had them for as long as I can remember. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Paul. Sandy, turn to you. Is this helpful and reassuring?
Yes and no. I think at the next meeting of PATHIC, I particularly want to have a look at what the measures are. If they haven't worked, what else is going to be looked at? Because I think Paul's right. These issues are not new. I've been hearing about medical and nursing locums and issues around about structure and pay for quite a long time now. As Simon knows, we've been hearing about issues about psychiatry and mental health services for quite a long time, and the desperate need to change models, but the model's still in place. So there is just something I'm getting at about our ability to be agile enough to put in the resource to transform, because otherwise we're going to continue to spin the same plates. And I think it's frustrating for everyone if that help and resource and capacity isn't provided to get on with the much needed work that has been around for a long time.
Yeah, thank you, Sandy. I think you're setting the scene there for the discussions we're going to have at that meeting in January as well, and the kind of things we'll need to iron out at that point as well. So thank you for that, Sandy. John, please.
Yeah, thank you. I attended the Realistic Medicine conference on the 28th of November, and that was another really good example, and being assured that there are things happening and the way it's being done, linking to the pathways, and clearly was thinking about our portfolio work and other pathways. So, but I suppose it's kind of building on what Paul was saying about we need to rethink this and do it differently, but then linking it, that doesn't happen overnight. And so, and I'm also mindful, you know, sitting in other places, that there's a real, the severity of the pressures on finances mean that we're going to go one of two ways. People are going to kind of retreat into themselves and try and survive year by year, and that's going to be managing decline, as opposed to what we're saying here. We need to do this collaboratively, but it needs to be over time. So my suggestion for when you have those discussions is the way I kind of think about it is, how do we see the light at the end of the tunnel and therefore keep everybody on board with that? And for me, looking at what the impacts are going to be, whether it's from preventative work, whether it's from pathways or whatever, in a way in which it contributes to that sustainability, we need to get to that point, because unless people can see that and we can demonstrate it, it's going to be theory rather than practice, and there's always going to be that immediate pressure to just cut things and have the unintended consequences. So I think we've kind of got the right approach, but we need to have that story and the tangible evidence that will take people with us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, John. I think that's really important. I think it's about being strategic and careful in what we're looking at now and the changes we're making now, so that the blossoming can carry on at a later date as well. And is that's very strategic work now. So we are in a good place to move forward and blossom as we move into the future. Alex, you indicated there as well. Do you want to come in?
Yeah, it's just to say, I mean, we are going to be looking at this over a multi-year period, and one of the things I'm keen to do is to align that with the Health and Social Care Partnerships multi-year period as well. Now and I'm also looking to strengthen our medium-term financial framework around our capital planning in relation to that too. So I think the points that John's making are good in relation to that, and we did start that process last year, but what we need to do is to kind of move forward a little bit more with that medium-term approach, also linking it to medium-term planning as well, because if the two of them are aligned and bringing some of the other plans in, such as the workforce plans, etc., then that will help to strengthen the governance framework and what we're trying to do.
Thank you. And what John also hinted at, and Adam referred to as well, really, in the Plan for the Future reference, was about that communication and bringing people with us, and that understanding developing through engagement as well, being really important as part of what we're doing. Thank you. So Mark, please now. Mark, I think Sandy, you content with that as an answer for where we are? Yeah, thank you. Mark, please.
Thanks very much, Chair. And just, I suppose I put my hand down after Caroline had come in about the prescribing aspect and looking at across the country. And then Nick highlighted some discussions about high-level drugs. What we were seeing in our IJB meeting this week was that actually the amount of prescribing is significant as well. It has gone up really starkly over the last few years. So not even expensive drugs necessarily, but just the volume. And I think that IJB overspends, for instance, we were fairly significant in Aberdeen City with regards to that. It was, and I think that's something that we need to look at. What's the trends there? Why are we seeing this? And I hope some of the social prescribing that might come out of our wellbeing hubs and our preventative aspects might really impact on that. But I think there's a public thought of I need to have a prescription before I feel that I've had any kind of proper interaction, possibly with a medical practitioner. I think that's something we need to work on a little bit as well. That it's not just about having a drug or a prescription, but that's just a thought on the overspends from the IGB point of view.
Thanks, Mark. That's helpful, and that adds to that discussion about the communication aspect as well. So thank you for that, Mark. And it adds to what Caroline was saying earlier about prescribing too. Thank you. Derek, please. Derek.
Thanks, Alison, and apologies for being late. I was going to ask about the value and sustainability group, and its effectiveness, but that's already been discussed. So my other point was there's a number of things in the report in Appendix 1. And if I just go through a few of the numbers that are striking, I think. The number of nurses at full-time equivalents is 296 above what it's supposed to be. That seems peculiar in a time when we're struggling for finance. So the agency nurses are 43% above what they were last year. Again, 43% above last year when we're in a difficult time. The medical staff is also up 14%, and the banding for funding payments for non-compliant rotas is up 28%. Now, these numbers are extremely high, and I just wondered why that was the case. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. Stephen, are you adding to that point from Derek, or are you something else?
Thank you, Chair. I suppose I'm offering a bit of a counterpoint, which is while the numbers in the report are the numbers in the report, there is perpetual discussion around particularly the Grampian Area Partnership Forum table about what the funded establishment should or should not be, particularly around registered and unregistered nursing. And I would remind colleagues that we have the Health and Care Safe Staffing Act and all its implications coming down the track as well. I've remained remarkably silent on this incredibly challenging issue of finance, and as I have said in previous board meetings, I will say it again, financial governance, of course, is important, and we need to collectively, as an organisation, cut our cloth, but we also need to meet our obligations under clinical and staff governance too. So it's about that transformation piece, and it's about doing things, doing the right things as well as we can, and also communicating it and taking everybody along with us, leaving no one behind. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. That's an important perspective too. So I'll turn to June to respond to both those comments there, I think. June.
Yeah, thank you both. Derek, nursing workforce is complex. I'm not going to try and deny that. It is extremely complex. I think we need to remember the amount of more patients we are caring for in our environments in non-standard beds. So we have an exceptionally more than we normally would have, which our funded establishments are not set for. So we are seeing more patients, we're caring for more patients, therefore we need more staff to do that. We are using safe and appropriate staffing to be able to achieve that. And for example, in Aberdeen Royal Infirmary, we have, as of October into November, we implemented Safe Care, which is part of our e-rostering allocate system. So we can look at a day-to-day basis if our care is safe, where we have appropriate staffing or not, and be able to mitigate that. So I think it's really important to understand these points as we look at those numbers of additional staff. And actually, it's not our registered nurses that are over, it's our healthcare support workers that we use more of rather than our registered nursing numbers. We equate that out, so our agency use and overtime and supplementary staffing generally does balance out the vacancy factor that we have. However, we are definitely using more healthcare support workers. Again, that's around about more patients that we're caring for in our clinical environments. I hope that clarifies, and I think that supports Stephen's point. Thank you.
Thank you, June. And Paul, are you adding to this as well, please?
Just very briefly around the medical aspect of what June's covered. Many of the things that June has referenced apply equally to the medical side, and in terms of consultant medical locums and junior doctor locums, it's variable across the areas. We have areas where, for lots of reasons that we are familiar with, there is a very high proportion of supplementary locum staff providing services that we have continued to maintain in the same manner as they were when they were first established. There is definitely questions to be asked in terms of 24-hour services for all specialties. So there's work to be done there. Some of the work that I mentioned earlier on around a tighter control of how we recruit and engage with locums is going to change that profile. In terms of our banding, we're no different from what I see in NHS in services in the central belt. And in fact, some of the work that they're doing currently mirrors what we've found. We've found that the banding issue in particular is a problem across most operational acute areas at night time. And at night time, generally the staff ratios are very different to during the day, yet the flow of patients doesn't change. And so we do have, we've got a workforce model and a service delivery plan that is not up to speed with the demands that we have currently. And trying to fit the two together is not working. And that's a type of work, that's a type of area that I think will come through the work that we're doing through the sustainability and value work, which will help change the model. And I think they're two big things, the way people come to hospital, when they come and how ill they come, and the way that we've distributed our workforce during a 24/7 clock. Thanks.
Thank you, Paul, and obviously we'll go into that in detail as well in January. A final comment from Bert, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just following on from Derek's comments about the percentages over what was seen in previous years, and picking up on June's point that she was explaining that. What I wonder, and whilst I recognise there's pressures right across the system in terms of nursing and other roles as well, but specifically in relation to nursing, is there any assessment made of areas perhaps where it's not so busy and there is some slack in the system, so that staff could perhaps be redeployed to other areas where there is a demand? Is that something that's been looked at? Can it be looked at? Do contracts allow that? Do terms and conditions allow that?
Thank you, Bert. June, please, I think this is for you.
Thanks, Bert. This is done on a day-to-day basis, twice a day, 3 times a day. We reassess each area, and I talked earlier about safe care. So safe care brings a big pinwheel up and it shows you every area, and it tells you against their patient acuity what their staffing looks like and if that's safe or not, so inappropriate. So if we've got green areas, we know that they're safe, their staffing's good, and if we've got red areas, then we look at what we can do from that green area and what would be required to go over and support into that red area. So we do that. We do this every day, numerous times a day, ensuring that our staffing is safe. We think about our other bits of our system as well. So let's think about a cancer nurse specialist or practice education facilitators. They're all doing unique roles as well, that are stopping people coming into hospital, for example, that are clinical nurse specialists on many occasions. So if we take that away, we put our demand on the front door. So it's about how do we balance all of that out every day, and it's certainly something our nurse managers, our chief nurses, that's part of their role, core part of their role is to do that. Thanks.
Thank you, June. And final comments from Adam and Caroline, please.
Thanks very much, Chair. I was just going to make a sort of general summary point as you drew this to a close, Chair. I think we've spoken about slightly longer term and short term things. For this current financial year, the short term measures, we are, as Alex said, every single week as a chief executive team working and then through the teams to bring those bits. And there isn't a magic bullet in that at all. They're all the sorts of complex things that we've heard from a number of members of the team describing. Similarly, for the medium and longer term, there isn't a magic bullet for that. There are all sorts of things that we are doing and working on. And hopefully at the seminar in January, we'll be able to explore those as a whole board and examine how we do those. And I really take Sandy's point about the pace on that and how do we, again, with the support of the board, inject a new pace into that with that real commitment that gets a sustainable system. And there isn't the bit that it worries me all the time is that there isn't a magic bullet. It is lots and lots and lots and lots of things that we need to do around making the whole system reimagined. And just my final point on that was when we get to it at the Area Clinical Forum as yet another dimension to that, and Mark's referenced it in his report, we started another mechanism to start to reimagine it. And again, in the digital item to come up, it absolutely sits hand in glove with some of that transformation that will come. So thanks, Chair, just for letting me come in. It's just a sort of a general sense of trying to organise that in our collective thinking. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. And final brief words from Caroline, please.
Thanks, Chair, and it's been really reassuring for me actually to listen to the dialogue around this financial position, which is critically important to us all. So the assurance for the board has to be focused around getting back to the 42.9, which even to say that is incredibly uncomfortable. However, that is what Alex, his leadership, the finance team and their leadership are doing to support leaders and managers across the system. The pace of that, Sandy, and the focus on that is significant. So I am actually assured that is going to be delivered in regards to doing that as close as possible back to the original agreement with Scottish Government. Within that, I think the realism and the fact that how do we demonstrate that with the financial constraints we have, our system is as efficient as possible? So our focus as an executive team has been to ensure that every single pound of the public purse is being spent well. And that's what we continue to challenge ourselves on in regards to our housekeeping, if you like, of budgets, as well as the things that you've heard from colleagues such as June and Brown around our workforce. Stephen mentioned it earlier around the balance, and lots of people have used the word balance. And I think my reflections as a chief exec outgoing from NHS Grampian, and will be facing the same challenges in Tayside, and this is a discussion that we're having nationally, is the balance of service governance, staff governance, clinical governance and fiscal governance. Our usual tactics of slowing things down to try and make in-year savings is not an option for us. If we look at our unscheduled care access, if we look at our planned care access, and in and amongst that, the experience of our colleagues, we've heard some really positive things about how Grampian's starting to turn the corner in regards to recruiting and retaining some professional groups. And that is really important for the sustainability of the services. So as I suppose words of encouragement and positivity around what is an incredibly difficult financial position is for NHS Grampian to absolutely build on its current strengths. So build on the fact that we can rely on each other as partners to be as efficient as possible. Build on the innovative work and the digital advancements that are being made, which I won't mention again, but will be brought up under Paul Allen's item. These are the things. What's become really evident to me is the question about what are we going to stop doing, or where are people less busy. It's really apparent you can't stop doing anything, and nobody believes they are any less busy than anybody else. So it's about how do you do things differently that allow services and quality to improve, and particularly not compromise further the access that the population have to services. Thanks.
Thank you, Caroline, and thank you for those words of encouragement as well. We have recommendations on this paper outlined in the papers. Can we agree those recommendations, please? Thank you. And we've overrun on that paper, but I think that was a really important discussion given the situation we're in. So thank you those who contributed, but we will now take our break at this point because I think those admin staff need that at this point now. So let's come back at 12:10, please. Let's take a break now and come back at 12:10. Thank you. Okay, it's 12:10 now, so we'll start again with the meeting. We're on item 9, the Baird Family Hospital and Anchor Centre project update. So I'll turn to June Brown and Gary Kidd to introduce this, please. June.
Thank you, Chair. Gary and I are both here on the call. So today's paper gives you an update on the progress that's been made by the technical and specialist teams, as well as our partners, NHS Assure, in moving these projects forward, both Baird and Anchor. You will see from the paper quite detailed description of each of the issues and where we are with those. I don't want to go into too much detail because most of it's in the paper, but we're both very happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, June. Any questions from any board members, please? Can I just say how useful it is to have this update on the paper regularly, because it keeps us really in touch with what's going on and alerts us to progress in it. So thank you very much for coming regularly to give us these updates and the detail in the paper too. Thank you. Dennis, please.
Thanks, Chair. And again, thanks for the paper. And just to echo the words from Alison, it's it's good to have these regular updates. Can I ask basically, what is the learning we can take away from this? Because obviously, I think one of the things for me is the frustration that I think is there in terms of a constant sort of changing. And I'm just wondering, in terms of that learning moving forward, in terms of working with the partners from the Scottish Government, etc. Is this something that is, in terms of that national element, will actually benefit other projects, capital projects moving forward? Because I think, we've just been in a situation where we seem to sort of take one step forward, 2 steps back sometimes. And although I know that, we're getting there, it's just a very slow process. So I'm just wondering, where is the learning, and will it be shared? Thank you.
Thank you, June.
Happy to come in on that. Thank you, Dennis, for the question. I'll let Gary come in after me. So during this process, NHS Assure has been developed, and it's a new way of working for all boards as we engage in this. So the learning is every day, Dennis, for NHS Assure and for boards, all boards that are doing any building work around about how we work together and how those processes take place. As you're probably aware, because you've heard us talk about it all the time, our Scottish Health technical memorandums are in place that guide us in what should be in buildings, and these need to be kept up to date with current evidence base and what's the safest and best way. And that's constantly being updated as well. So and we continually go back and share with. And
June, sorry, June, it's difficult to hear. You keep cutting out.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better, I think.
Apologies. So we continue to work in sharing our learning back and forth and with other boards as well. So we've reached out to both Fife and Highland, who have both completed new builds recently, and to learn from what they learned and how can we incorporate into our project. So we're doing this in multiple ways. I'm taking from Alison's face that she can't hear me very well. Can you hear me okay?
No, I can hear you now.
Yeah.
No, I can hear you now. That's fine now. Yeah.
I'll hand over to Gary because his mic will probably work better than mine.
Thank you, June. Thank you. Gary.
Yeah, thank you. I'll maybe just add to that. I mean, we meet, as we've reported previously, we meet fortnightly with NHS Assure at a senior level, and there's an ongoing dialogue and engagement around key lessons that we're taking out of this. NHS Assure have established a learning network across NHS Scotland that all boards are members of, and that's used as a key vehicle for sharing learning. Another example, I've been asked to go and talk to the Framework Scotland Project Board or Programme Board early in the new year in order to share some of the learning coming out of this project. I think one of the points I would make is it's a two-way street, and you mentioned some of the frustrations, and I appreciate it is frustrating as we review design aspects and we look to build learning in, but what we're doing is we're learning from other projects as well, and that's why we're taking forward that sort of review, and we're reacting to where, because of that learning, we know that there will be changes in guidance in the future. So there is that two-way street element to it as well.
Thank you, Gary. Dennis, are you assured by those responses?
Yes, yeah, I think, I think, and I also welcome the fact that Gary's being asked to continue to share that learning as well, because it's incredibly important. But yes, and I think just acknowledging that it is quite frustrating, but we're getting there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I just ask around, for assurance around the impact that on other parts of NHS Grampian as a result of the longer time span of this project? Are we still able to minimise the impact on other areas who are not getting the change that they expected when they expected it? I don't know if Gary could answer that one. Are we minimising impact as much as we can?
The answer is yes, we are. Obviously, it's challenging. There's areas of the Aberdeen Maternity Hospital that are not in the best condition, but we're in ongoing dialogue with those services, and obviously the estates team are around some of the work that needs to be done within AMH particularly, but I know there are challenges in other areas of the estate where services are keen to move out into the new facilities. And indeed, one of the bits of work that I've mentioned when you look at section 4 of the report, we are keen that we look at this from a holistic standpoint as well. And if there is to be further delay in these buildings, then what is the impact across the system? And it's important that we surface those issues in a transparent way.
Thank you very much for that, Gary. Thank you. I can't see any further questions or comments on this paper, so thank you for those responses. We have recommendations written in the paper. Can we agree those recommendations, please? Thank you. Recommendations agreed. Thank you. And then we turn on to item 10, the digital strategy. Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Where are you? Paul, looking forward to your presentation.
Okay, thanks, Chair. I'm just trying to get the presentation up, and with the new version of Teams, I'm struggling to pick what I think is the one I'm supposed to be picking. Steve, have you got? I should be able to find it. Apologies for this, Chair.
Yep, I can share that.
Brilliant, Stephen. Thank you.
Do that. Apologies, I've made maybe a couple of little minor tweaks to it, Steve, just before I come in, but I'll anyway. So good morning, everyone, and thanks, Chair. Morning, everyone. So we've got the revised service transformation through digital strategy with us today. It's a 2023 refresh. With me today is Dr. Steve Bagley, Consultant Sexual Health and HIV Physician, and also Clinical Director of eHealth. So I'll be talking today, but Steve's going to be coming in and supporting me for the next 10 minutes around the slides. So first of all, the slide that's up in front of us. Why are we doing this? Since the October 2020, when the board approved the digital strategy, there's a few things across the kind of local national landscape that has meant that we've had to refresh it. And you could see bullet points there. We've got the plan for the future, and as we've heard today, quite a lot of references around the future and how a digital enablement might be able to support not just that plan, but around sustainability and value, and also across the partnerships and where we're going as an organisation. The Digital Health and Care Strategy Delivery Plan 23-24, the AI strategy nationally, but it would also like to point out that we've got a reference there to the North of Scotland AI Strategy 2023. It's in development, and Steve, along with other regional colleagues, are leading that at the moment. And we will take probably to a board seminar and to the board next year by springtime the AI strategy for the North and how we will implement that locally. And also the data strategy for health and social care in Scotland. On top of that, as I've got at the bottom there in the slide, we've got the NHS Scotland Delivery Planning Guidance for Health Boards issued in February 23, and it includes in there to optimise use of digital and data technologies in the design and delivery of health and care services for improved patient access. So that's really important in terms of delivery planning, our ADP response as an organisation, and we've taken that into account. But once again, it just highlights the enabling part of digital and the role that it can play. Next slide, please, Steve. So here we've got the overall goal that we're looking for to reshape and transform services, and that's about supporting health and care. And again, as I've alluded to, the conversations we've been having this morning has already had things around there in terms of where the health social partnerships want to go, and also supporting the wider organisation and sustainability and value, etc. So a key part in there, but the enablers around electronic records and better use of data, and indeed infrastructure information governance, they are enablers, play an important part around those aims on the verticals around proved outcomes, citizen experience outcomes, staffing experience, and being financially sustainable. So they are key of why we're doing this and how the enabling part and the goals we're looking for. Next slide, please, Steve. So since the October 2020, we've obviously done quite a bit of work. It's so easy to get caught up in the strategy and finances are really tough and what have you, which they are, but we've been able to demonstrate, we have been able to secure finance, and we've been able to implement some large pieces of work. And a bit of a thread there, so highlighted around the safety and security part, the network and information systems, without that kind of basic platform and infrastructure that we have to keep us, A, to provide it, and B, keep us safe and what have you in a world that is obviously continually stressful around dealing with cyber security and what have you, and data protection, then it's important to have that foundations and that infrastructure work from. Hospital prescribing, I'll maybe come on to that a little bit in the next slide, but HEPMA has been a big thing for the North. Grampian have led in that on behalf of the North, and indeed locally in Grampian, we're well in the throes of implementing that and the part it plays, and also note taking and track here, and in terms of electronic note taking. Linked with community investigation hubs, enablement by the TrackPair and OrderComms in terms of ordering tests and what have you. That's kind of a key theme I've picked out there. I could pick others. There's others in the bullet points there around that safety, electronic records, and new models of care, and what we said and what we've done. I've picked out a few key things. Next slide, please. So, as per the 2020 strategy, we've got the revised 5-year roadmap. So again, we've sort of, the graphics has changed a little bit. I think it looks far better now in terms of highlighting the service change part, the electronic information aspects, and the information and governance. So there's quite a few things in there, but there's key things I'd like to pick out. The analog to digital telecoms switchover. Again, it's that underpinning infrastructure and what have you, it's important. The Hull-Shire Partnerships update we got earlier on, that was a special mention of that. So the move away from analog to digital is important. The community nurse system. We've had a system within Aberdeen City for a few years now, and the aim would be to have that pan-Grampian community nurse system across Grampian. Network and Wi-Fi infrastructure refresh. We've put a huge amount of investment into this, have done and are going through a big Wi-Fi and infrastructure upgrade as I speak. And cross-regional IT systems access. The Baird and Anchor, we've just had an update on that. In terms of digital self-check-ins, that's going to be a first for us around that. So both Baird and Anchor will have that walk in, go to a kiosk, digital self-check-ins, what have you, will be really important as part of the opening of those two amazing facilities. Move to increase cloud-based systems. We obviously do some of this already, but the future aspiration and aim is to move to an increased cloud-based way of working. HEPMA, we touched on that a couple of minutes ago. That hospital electronic prescribing, it's so easy to say that, but this is a massive multi-year project. We spoke about it now for probably across Scotland the last 10, 15 years. It's a huge undertaking, but the implementation that across Scotland, but specifically for Grampian, will support high quality and safe care around the implementation of that. Digital front door is another one I would like to make a special mention. That citizen access to records is really key. That's the Scottish Government's ambition that we go along that, and we will play our part on that development route to and initially to get introduce it in 2025, but then moving into 26-27, where we have that kind of integrated way of working and citizens be able to access their record information. Artificial intelligence is obviously a key theme. That will be an increased focus over the next few years, but it's not something that's entirely new. So if I pick on radiology, for the last few years, there's been an exciting initiative through there of the introduction of an AI-based system that complements diagnostic review and delivery of high quality, safe and effective care. And what that does is it's a partner alongside the consultant. The radiologist reviews those diagnostics, and indeed the AI system comes in and it'll flag up things that helps complement the diagnosis and indeed can maybe pick out any mistakes and what have you. So it is about complementing the consultants there and working, which ultimately is a benefit to the end patient and the care that we deliver. Increased automation through digital, that's going to be another theme. Digital automation will free up time for staff to focus on the areas where their skills and expertise make the most difference. And you know, we've heard phrases over the years about freeing time to care and what have you. Well, it's wider than that. It's making sure that staff and what they're paid to do is focused on the priority that they need to focus their skills and expertise on. So that's a key one. My Digital Workplace is something we've been working on for the last year or so, 18 months, around a staff portal and communication tool, which will allow staff to engage, to pick up things, key information about when the organisation, ongoing and how they communicate and what have you. That'll be a staged process, but that's quite an exciting initiative that's coming along. I suppose the last thing I want to pick, I could have picked another 10 out of there, but the final bubble under 2027 on the roadmap, the long-term aim to have a fully integrated national record that covers citizens, health and care, local government and third sector is a great ambition to focus on. It's not going to be an easy one, but it's something we've obviously been engaged in as a board, but talking to the government, working with them for some time. And that's a really exciting one. It's not an easy one, but it's a big prize to be had to get that sharing across everyone that I've mentioned. Next slide, please. Okay, in terms of risks, lack of funding, short and long term, is probably going to be a concern. But we need to look at working with the government to make sure we've got plans to lever any opportunities that might come out from opportunistic funding, or indeed the ongoing planning that we do with the government to make sure that we get funding for some ongoing digital initiatives, which we do. And as I've demonstrated already, there's been a wide range of things that we have invested in over the last year or so. lack of agreement of priorities and management of change. And what I mean by that is just getting that agreement on what our actual priorities are, that's realistic, that's tangible, we can deliver on them. So let's not go for 20, but we can definitely deliver on 5, and it's getting that absolute management and agreement on that change and priorities. Dependencies on national programme works will also be a risk. So there are things that come in nationally what will influence what we do locally, and we'll need to factor that in. And I suppose the last one that's worth mentioning is the specialist skills shortage. So as we evolve digitally and we go into the world of AI, artificial intelligence, automation, etc., that's perhaps not a traditional place where we've been, and we may really have to look at both how we take in skills, but also how we train our own workforce around the e-health workforce and IT for the future to be able to meet that demand. Next slide, please, Steve. And you will cover this, Chair, but highlighting the two things within the paper that I'm looking to get in approval today to note the progress around the strategy since 2020 of what we said, what we did, and also endorse the strategic objectives and priorities as laid out in section 2.1 and 2.3 of the covering paper. And just before I finish there, maybe if I could just invite Dr. Bagley in for his own views on a couple of things. And I think especially I'd like to ask Dr. Bagley about the comments that came in earlier on the chat, I think specifically from Paul Baku, but I know that Steve's got a couple of things he'd like to cover as well. Steve?
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, I mean, a couple of things, big things to highlight here are around supporting people, members of the public, patients, to help themselves wherever possible, providing more access to data and support tools to allow them to look after themselves better. And if we're going to become financially sustainable, we need to do a lot more of that, with clearly a safety net for those who aren't able to manage that approach. Secondly, in terms of sustainability, automation of low-value staff processes is absolutely essential focus. And Paul mentioned earlier the potential we have in the new year, in fact, to be able to start to automatically sign off low-risk test results within our hospital environment. And an important aspect linked to that is patient safety. There's a section in the strategy, which you may have seen, on patient safety and healthcare IT. Our approach to this, we plan to develop in the coming year and ensure that we maintain patient safety and system safety in general with every IT development that we bring and every new digital enabled care pathway that we introduce.
Okay, thank you both. Can you put the slides down now? Brilliant, thank you. And I think the importance of this work as well has been seen by how many times it's been mentioned in this meeting so far, and it's come up on various items as something that's really important to us as a board and across NHS Grampian itself as well. So thank you very much for that. Got any questions or comments, please, from anyone? Hussein and then Mark, please. Hussein.
Thank you very much, Chair, and can I thank Paul, Dr. Bagley, and also Neil for the report. I think this was a very interesting read, and it was very laid out, and I particularly liked the two case studies that you outlined, the now and the future at the start of the report, because I think people always relate to something tangible that they can try and visualize in their mind as to what the patient and the staff journey may be. I was very pleased to see mention in the strategy of working with our community partners. I suppose my only comment on that would be, and I must put a transparency statement at this point, Chair, that I am a practicing access consultant. But it's one thing, I mean, that education piece is going to be really important if we are to increase the number of people that feel comfortable with accessing digital services and who, more importantly, actually want to use digital services. But it's one thing to educate people in how to use the technology. It's quite another challenge in educating people how to use the technology where they need additional assistive tools to be able to access that same technology. And my concern is, particularly in rural parts of our community, that we perhaps have capacity constraints in that regard in terms of the expertise and also potentially the devices themselves. And obviously we'll be aware of the very high cost of some of the access technologies that would be required for our citizens to be able to access these spaces. So that's the only comment on that specific point I would make, is just to bear that in mind. Absolutely, let's use our third sector organisations and libraries to deliver the support to citizens, but let's also bear in mind that they themselves may not have the competencies needed to help some of our citizens who require that additional support. A couple of questions. Firstly, around interoperability. This is something that came up a lot at the GP visioning workshops that I think Dennis alluded to earlier in the call. And there's really strong emphasis in the paper on how we will work to make our internal systems interoperable. I'm wondering, amongst the public, and particularly amongst those who are currently more digitally inclined, if I can use that phrase, there is a big move towards smart technology. And understandably, there will be a question: is there a way in which the existing smart technologies that we use in our homes can be interoperable with the technologies and the innovations that are shown in the paper? And how do we make sure that we are both ahead of the curve in terms of technology moving at such a fast pace, but also that we don't end up in the unfortunate situation where some of these developments come to fruition only to find that the existing standards have now moved on, and IFTTT is a good example of that. It was all the rage 3 years ago, and you're now seeing mainstream technology providers starting to move away from that standard towards Mata and others. And the second question really is, we've seen a lot here about integrating services within the health and social care. I think Paul and Dr. Bagley mentioned there about how this would integrate with local government and other services. Could you maybe give us a narrative on how, for example, this could be integrated with social work and justice, some of the other sectors which have a really close relationship to health, and how we can make seamless data sharing and access to information better for those services as well? Is that within the scope of the strategy? And if it's not within the scope of the strategy, what challenges and what enablers do you see needing to come, whether that's from central government or elsewhere? Thank you.
Thank you, Hussein. Paul?
Gosh, there's a lot in there.
There's a lot there,
thanks,
yeah.
Hussein. A lot in there. So if we can maybe just cover the interoperability part to start with, that's obviously one that we've been grappling with for the last couple of years, but also highlights the importance to involve the third sector, health and social partnerships and local government partners as well. And the reason I say that is, and it touches on the second part of how we all connect with each other. So are we at the point of connecting in people's home from smart devices? Well, it'll be considered as part of the digital kind of access, citizens access front door that we're looking at. So that we've covered there as we progress with that. But there's also a more fundamental one in terms of, local government partners, ourselves and others being able to seamlessly communicate with each other. And at times there's been boundaries around that, but there's now the appetite to work through those boundaries and how we might actually have one, if you like, directory and be able to connect each other across Scotland. And that's something that we've had ongoing discussions with Aberdeen City Council, for example, around smarter digital cities, with the work that I've been involved with them over the last few years. It's in there. So it's a difficult one to give you a very precise answer, Hussein, but it is very much at the heart of what we're trying to do. And we are engaged with some people, but I think we need to make sure that we get that wider community of people involved in terms of making sure that we get the interoperability bit right. Steve, in terms of this, the other aspects there, I've covered the kind of wider aspects, but maybe you want to come in a bit specifics. I know you're involved in nationally around work.
Yeah, on a brief word on interoperability. So in terms of social care, so there's 3 local authorities in Grampian, as you know, and with different systems. We have had discussions with local authorities on data and requirements. In terms of imagining what could be tangible in the not too distant future, it could be that a social worker, care manager would be able to see for people in their cohort, are any of them currently inpatients? A recurrent refrain is, I went to the house and they weren't there, and they didn't know they'd been admitted last night. So that sort of thing would be, you know, a little case study of that, and that is definitely achievable and something we're in discussions, at least with Aberdeen City Council, about. In terms of the other aspects of equality, rurality, and so on, we know that from the equality impact assessment for Near Me, a video consulting platform, that it's a complex picture. For many people, people prefer digital technology as providing much better access to information and services than they otherwise had when they had to change 2 buses to get to the clinic. Whereas for some people, it's less good, and the key thing coming out is choice. We will never have a system that meets everyone's needs, but that doesn't mean that we have to move to better things, which will enable the majority of people to access better healthcare. On the home integration and home automation and the sort of the bleeding edge of that, and how we help people there. Well, I mean, NHS Inform is already available via Alexa, via Echo Dots. You can ask for support there. InSystems and Apple have connected InSystems Track Care with Apple Health. So we don't have that in Scotland yet, but that is a potential thing to think about how we would do that. The Digital Front Door programme, as Paul mentioned, is the big thing that people are waiting for. But the government won't come and solve all our problems. And I think it's important to state that we can't wait for the government to provide all our solutions for citizen-facing digital services. We need to do some of that ourselves, particularly in areas of documents management, appointment letters, and so on, and other aspects. The Digital Front Door is long overdue. It was promised in 2017 for 2020, 2023, 2024. It still isn't here now, looking like it's due in 2025. So we do need to do some of it ourselves, and that requires an investment to get the benefits to improve productivity for our staff and improve the financial situation we're in.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Is that helpful, Hussein?
It is. I'll just come back very quickly, Chair, and I promise it will be much shorter than my initial.
Yeah, very quickly, please.
Yeah. I mean, I think the key word there, Dr. Bagley, that you mentioned was choice. You know, certainly speaking from my experience as a trainer and a consultant, people often get very anxious, especially when we talk about, you know, automated check-ins, as we heard earlier. And I think it's just keeping in mind that, you know, one size doesn't necessarily suit all, and that if we can operate a choice-first approach, we're likely to probably get more buy-in from people that way than as opposed to, you know, saying digital will be the best substitute for everything. So I look forward to seeing how that develops, and I say thank you very much to all of you. That was a really interesting paper. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Hussein. Thank you. Mark.
Thanks very much, and thanks. I'm a real advocate of digital technology, and I do like the choice. I do a lot of it myself on a clinical basis. A couple of things about the digital exclusion, possibly, and this doesn't always just relate to patients, but can relate to those that are other NHS contractors. And I talk necessarily about optometry and dentistry, where we don't seem to have the same equality as our general medical practitioners with regards to accessing or receiving letters back digitally that their GPs do with regards to Dragon. I know Steve and I have talked about this previously, but I want to know if there's been any forward movement on that, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that for Steve?
Oh, yeah, thanks, Chair. I was just about to ask Steve to come in. Thanks.
Yeah, so in terms of community optometrists, I agree that we have 4 contracting groups and we don't treat them equally. Some have more access to data than others, and we need to enable that data access if we want to have those contractors working to the best of their abilities to support the patients. To a certain extent, we are for community optometrist access to the emergency care summary, for example, for prescribing. We're that's linked to the Orion portal, which I know we've discussed for a few years now, but that's across the region, and Highland have made some good progress there with their community pharmacists having access to that for ECS access. And we're aiming that the next stage of that to be optometrists accessing that. As we know, optometrist access to the ECS has been agreed nationally as a good thing to have and for health boards to provide. In terms of letters, there's multiple strands to letters and who you might want to write to. That you might be aware there's a large overhaul of the whole referral and communication system for Scotland. That was commissioned by the government. The first design stage for that has completed. It's likely to lead to not a total replacement of Sky Gateway, which is the main communication system that's used. Probably a sort of modular decomposition and rebuilding is how it's being described, which needs to include other groups, and optometrists have been involved in the design for that. And I'd like to think that the future system would meet your requirements much better than the current one does.
Thank you, Stephen. Is that helpful, Mark?
That's fine. Thank you. Yes, thanks very much.
Thank you. Ian, please.
Thanks, Alison. It's a comment rather than a question. Just say I was really impressed both with the substantial achievements to date and the ambitious plans for the years ahead. And you can see that this is something that will, or many somethings actually, but which will make a real difference for patients and folk in the northeast. Can I also just do an overabundance of caution, since both Paul and Stephen mentioned NHSG working with Aberdeen City Council, make a transparency statement that I am a member of Aberdeen City Council. Thanks, Alison.
Thank you very much, Ian. Thank you for those comments. John, please.
Yeah, thank you. Just two quick asks. It'd be really good to receive a copy of the slides. They were really interesting and helpful. And I think it might be useful for us to consider Population Health Committee doing a deeper dive on some of these parts, the citizen record and how that's going to impact, like Steve's talking about, around self-management prevention and then that equity bit. So I think that would be a helpful thing to program in for next year. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, John. Thank you. That's a useful pointer. Thank you. And can I just thank again all the team for the work behind this digital strategy and bringing it together and presenting it to us today as well. But a particular thanks to Paul as well, again, for all the work he's done over many years on this and other topics as well. So thank you, Paul, again, for everything you've done for NHS Grampian, helping drive us forward. Okay, with that, can we agree the recommendations that are written on the paper? We're asked for endorsement and obviously to note the progress and to endorse the strategic objectives and priorities laid out in the paper. Can we agree? Thank you. We've agreed those recommendations. Thank you very much. And now move on then to item 11, the Corporate Parenting Annual Report 22-23. And I'll pass to Geraldine Fraser to introduce this, please. Geraldine.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. We're really pleased to bring forward this report, which details the activity around about corporate parenting for the last year. So obviously the report is here for assurance purposes, and also we're detailing the work that we're doing collaboratively around about the promise as well. Children are a priority in the plan for the future, and I think it's really important that the board are cited on some of the work that we're doing with care experienced children and young people. So I'm going to pass over to Caroline Clark, who's the Chief Nurse for Combined Child Health, and she's going to take us through a few highlights from the report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there. Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me along. So this is the Corporate Parenting Annual Report. You'll see it's for the period April 2022 to March 2023. I won't take you through the whole thing, but I think the first page, the cover page, I think is worthy of mention in why it's important. So 50% of the adult prison population are care experienced. 30% of care experienced children become homeless, and 50% of care experienced children have mental health issues. And I think that's really a stark reflection on our care system across the piece. So the report, there are a number of highlights. So the first bit is around the reporting structures has changed with the implementation of the Children's Board, with the the new, well, it's not new now, but the integrated family portfolio and the structure with the Women's Board and the Children's Board. So the NHSG corporate parenting group reports into the Children's Board, and that's a new development from last year. One of the things that I want to highlight to you is around children's rights. So there's a big focus on children's rights and how we hear the voice of the child across all of our services, and that is across the board, public sector wise, particularly. For us within health, it's really important because quite often, and certainly working within paediatrics, we hear the voice of the parent a lot. But we don't hear the voice of the child necessarily, and there are some initiatives afoot within health and social care about how we make sure that the documentation that the care inspector are looking at actually does show the voice of the child in the documentation. So I'll point you to page 7 where we've got our current statistics. So looked after children across the board are continuing to decrease or continue decreasing, and that trend is the same across Grampian, and you'll see there's a table there with a split between Aberdeen City, Shire and Murray. So we generally have around 1,000 looked after children across Grampian. Each child or young person needs to have an initial health assessment, and that is carried out by the health assessment team. And then you'll see the initial health assessment completion. So the initial health assessments are coordinated by the looked after children team, but the health assessments themselves are done by the school nurses and health visitors that are closest to the child. So that's a really important component part of what we do, so that the health assessment isn't a standalone assessment. It's actually part of that overall health plan for that child. So on to this other thing that I wanted to highlight to you is around unaccompanied asylum seekers. That's a new one for us in Grampian and probably for the UK actually. So in 2022, we received requests for 22 initial health assessments for unaccompanied asylum seekers, and they automatically become looked after by the local authority. And so far in 2023, when this report was written a couple of months ago, we'd received requests for 66 initial health assessments. The health assessments are only a very small part because they're only the gateway to services, but it's proved really challenging to be able to meet those children's needs, get their health assessments done in a timely way, and be able to meet those needs. So we currently have a looked after children's nurse and a looked after children's paediatrician who has a couple of sessions a week to do all the looked after children's work, the adoption and fostering, medicals, etc. So that is proving quite a challenge for them across the board. So really that kind of just takes us on to the priorities that we want to be looking at for 23 and 24. So the data and monitoring, we still don't really have a very good handle on what our who this population is, and part of that is because the young person, once they leave care, it's their choice if they want to be known as looked after or not. But our corporate parenting responsibilities reach up to the age of 26, so that's a real challenge for us in understanding who these children are, and are we meeting their needs. We've been doing a self-evaluation on the promise. That's not quite complete yet. We've got a bit of work to do on that yet to really understand where our gaps are. So we'll be bringing that to you in next year's annual report. I've spoken a bit about unaccompanied asylum seeking children, how we're going to meet that demand. The response to the older children, young people's feedback. So that's about the bit that I said between the 18 and 25-year-olds. We did do a bit of work last year on getting feedback from those young people that we could reach and how can we better meet their needs. And the final item is around the engagement across NHS Grampian. We were at the board seminar earlier on this year, and there was a really strong appetite to implement trauma-informed care across NHS Grampian, and we felt in the integrated family portfolio that might be a really good the integrated family portfolio may be the first you know, kind of leading the way on that. Trauma-informed care will reach more than just our looked after children or care experience, young people, citizens experiencing psychological trauma in all fields would benefit from this approach if we chose to adopt it as an organisation. So that's all that I really wanted to highlight to you today. Happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Caroline. Thank you for that. We've got a couple of questions already. I'll turn to Sandy, please. Sandy.
Thanks, Chair, and huge thank you to Caroline and Geraldine for this report. I thought it was really informative and very reassuring in terms of the level of detail that's taking place. Geraldine, you came to PAFIC, and I think you provided a really helpful report. And I found the seminar really helpful as well, and gave me quite a number of pointers in relation to what we're doing, what we're still struggling to do, and so forth. I think one of the things, maybe just to start with, is don't make the assumption that everyone knows what the promise is. I think there are gaps in understanding across health boards. There are gaps in local authorities as well, but sometimes there's an assumption that's just a local authority thing that has to be followed. And even in local authorities, there's a kind of suggestion that it's just education and social work. So I think there is a very kind of piecemeal and confused understanding of what statutory responsibilities organisations like us have. And it may well be that at some point in a development session, we maybe need to have some sort of briefing. I know in another organisation I work for, we had something from Who Cares, and it was very enlightening. It was very powerful. So it might be worth thinking about that. I suppose just in terms of assurance and closing the assurance loop, you've given me a very good sort of understanding of what the structure looks like in terms of reporting and accountability and so forth. I would quite like to get some sort of sense of the so what in terms of young people giving us feedback in terms of problems they had with access to or movement through services. So, you know, maybe some examples of what they've said in terms of some of the difficulties or challenges they've encountered, and what has the organisation done about that? And have you fed that back to the young people to say, this is what we've seen and this is what we've done? And I suppose the last thing, I would dearly like to be part of just even sitting in a discussion with young people in relation to NHS Grampian and how we're responding to their needs. So if there was ever an opportunity, I would very much like to take it up, because I'm sure for a lot of people who receive services, the board will feel very distant and remote. And I think we need to do everything we can to say, we are actually listening to you. And thanks for letting us know, and this is what we've done about it.
Thank you, Sandy. Caroline, do you want to respond?
Yeah, so I think it's really important that, and that's something that we've struggled with within health, is how do we get the voices of children and young people who are care experienced, and that's where our partnerships with our local authorities, champions boards, etc., that's where that is really important, that we participate in those, because we don't want to have engagement or consultation as a tick box exercise. And the engagement we've done previously has been very much based on what do the young people want. They don't really want to talk to us about general health access, but what they do want to talk to us about, for example, is access to mental health services. And we've done that in the past, and the mental health services have gone along and had dialogue with the young people about how they can make things better. So yeah, we're really thoughtful about that, but we're also thoughtful about making sure that it's meaningful. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And June, did you want to come in on that as well?
Thanks, yeah, just supporting what Caroline's saying. Sandy, in our recent multi-agency child protection inspections that we've had, particularly the Aberdeenshire one, it was picked up by the young inspectors in relation that are, you know, facing NHS Grampian information on our website, etc., didn't include anything around them in it, and we've absolutely changed that. So when Murray was inspected, the inspectors were picking up the work that we've done with young people, and really in that child's protection space to listen to them and have that quite clearly documented within our services. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, June. Thank you. Anne, please.
Thank you, Alison, and thank you, Geraldine and Caroline, for an excellent report. And thank you for answering. One of my questions was about listening to the voice of young people, but the other one I'm greatly concerned about is the young people or care experienced young people being 30% of them ending up maybe homeless. That's a large figure. Could you maybe clarify or add a bit to that? Because that, to me, that's giving me a lot of concern.
Thank you. Caroline, can you come in?
Yeah, I'm not sure that I'm the best person to answer that, because that's really part of the work that we are involved in as corporate parenting partners, but it's really the work of the local authorities, isn't it? And so some of that, a lot of that will be addressed at local authority level. So I'm sorry, I don't have the answer for that, but I can certainly, if it would be helpful, I can certainly ask each of the local authorities to provide a response to the board if that would be of use to you.
If I can come back, yes, I asked the same questions when we have the social work reports as well, Caroline.
Okay.
So it would be helpful, maybe you'll maybe get better answers, but I do ask those as well because it has given me great concern for a long time.
Yeah.
Thank you. Again, highlights the importance of that partnership we've been talking about earlier in the meeting as well. But June, did you want to come in as well?
Yeah, thank you. And I think it's a really good question and understanding it, and what is our responsibility within that, and as an anchor organisation, what can we do to support our communities and our young people within it? So a piece of work that we're just starting, and Caroline knows a little bit about this, is we've been doing some work with the Royal College of Nursing looking at a cadet scheme, and we've just had agreement with partnership with the Foyer, who obviously looked after children, will go and live there and look at employment opportunities. So we're looking at supporting those young people into NHS Grampian, into employment. They will come and have experience with us as, say, a healthcare support worker, and then think about how we can support them into employment opportunities. So I think it's the so what. We know those are the figures, but what are we doing as a board to help? I think is really important.
Thank you. Anne, is that helpful?
Yeah, thank you, June. That's very interesting. I certainly would like to hear more about that project. That's really good. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you. And thank you, June. Joyce, please.
Thanks. I'm delighted to hear from June about that cadet project, because my question was to be around what are we doing as an anchor organisation and corporate parents. It's our duty to help these children find work. And as the largest employer in Grampian, I would have thought it would be relatively straightforward for us to look at numbers of opportunities, not just in nursing, but in all the other trades that we do, especially for the young boys who are coming through as care experienced young people. I'd also like to ask if those of us who are on the board can sometimes get invited along to champions boards. I certainly used to go in the past and found them very valuable, and I think the kids found it useful to meet people from different walks of life and to hear about things and to get contacts. So I would appreciate that as well. And I'd also like to see us doing more, because I'm still concerned that the mortality rate for care experienced young people is several times that of children who are not going through care, and that's a horrible statistic to still have in place in Scotland. Thanks.
Thank you. Caroline, do you want to comment, or Geraldine?
Yeah, thanks. No, I think that's really helpful comments, and I think probably even having this discussion is useful when we're shaping our thinking about our action plan, which will come back to the board next year. So, and I think obviously a few people have touched on the importance of doing this with community planning partners, and that absolutely does happen. I think probably this is one part of the reporting, because this is about the health responsibilities we've really focused on, but actually there's much more activity happening across the CPPs as well. But we're really thoughtful about that and how perhaps we can detail a bit more of those joined up pieces of work as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Geraldine. Thank you. John, please. Yeah,
it's really to support that extra work around anchor, etc. Those figures that are on page 258 that Anne pointed to, they are absolutely stark, but they've been like that for decades. And so breaking out of this, I'm sort of mindful of us being assured against what we're asked to do in the legislation and the promise. But it is, if we're going to break something here in terms of breaking that cycle, then we do need to go that extra part. And I was also going to ask that question about anchor. So thank you, June, for answering that. But I think in the next time we see this, it would be really good to see how you've dug into that and try to bring something in different. Just that whole, a lot of this is about treating the problem, but as Harry Burns would say around trauma-informed work, it's about going to where people are. And one of the things about care experienced is that people don't have the same opportunities. And if Anchor can create those opportunities and those networks, that might make a material difference. So very much support that we take that focus.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, John. That's very helpful. Thank you. And Susan?
Yeah, thank you. It's just to confirm that we're required to undertake an anchor baseline as part of the preparation for next year's annual delivery plan. So that will set out what we are intending to, well, where we're at, and then as part of our health inequalities action plan, set out how we wish to improve as we move forward. So that will come through the Population and Health Committee and clearly links very closely to the work that Geraldine and Caroline have just described. And again, just to give reassurance, although we call it our anchors work within our community planning partnerships, we're looking at community wealth building, and indeed there is a meeting in January pulling together all of the anchor leads to ensure that we are making the most of our partnership opportunities around employability and our premises as well as procurement. So hopefully that provides some reassurance about the connections being made.
Thank you for that too, Susan. I think in the paper itself, it talks about needs of care experienced young people being a priority, but it's putting a strain on a very small team. And I think the conversation that we've had here shows the importance of partnership work in this, and that we all have a role to play. We are all individually corporate parents as well. We all have a role to play within this wider scheme. So I think that's a perspective we need to have on this as well, that it's really been really good to have this paper in front of us, and it's reminding us all of our responsibilities as individuals within the system as well. So thank you for that. I can't see any final indications from anybody, so can we agree the recommendations of this paper, please? Thank you. Thank you for that. Agreed the recommendations on paper 11. That leads us on to paper 12, which is a system-wide approach to winter planning. We'll turn back to Sandra McLeod to introduce this, please. Sandra.
Thank you, Chair. The paper before the board members, which I'm sure people have had opportunity to read, is just for endorsement. And the only thing I would add is that the winter plan is in its draft format, ready to be shared with stakeholders before it starts to go through approval and governance process. And the winter plan has been a collation of the winter plan for 23-24 will come from the Scottish Government's direction on the winter plan and priorities, as well as the whole system winter plan event that's identified services that are in place, as well as the actions identified to manage the predicted activity over the forthcoming winter months. So the winter plan has been structured following those priorities and identified by Scottish Government, and we will ensure that actions are aligned with those. So just to say that this is just endorsing that this approach is supported by the board, and that hopefully within a very short time you will see the paper coming through governance.
Thank you very much for that, Sandra. Thank you. Any questions or comments for Sandra on winter planning? No, so just say thank you for the paper so far, Sandra, and thank you for the work that's ongoing, and we look forward to further updates as well as we move forward. Thank you. Thank you. Can we endorse the paper then as is requested in the recommendation? Thank you. Paper's endorsed. Thank you. Moving on to item 13 then, the Armed Forces Covenant Duty. Alistair Pattinson is going to present this one to us, I think, and Philip as well. Philip, are you standing in for Tom? Yeah, Philip, are you starting then, Philip?
Yes, please. Thanks very much. And good afternoon, everyone. I think I know most people on the call, but I'm Philip Shipman, Head of People of Change, and deputising for Tom today. I think it's really important to recognise the presence of current and former armed forces personnel in our communities and our responsibilities towards them. Certainly from my own experience of working in Dr. Gray's in particular, can't help but acknowledge and appreciate the huge contribution veterans make to our workforce. Today, we're asking the board to note that NHS Grampian has appropriate actions in place to show due regard to the principles of the Armed Forces Covenant, and we're asking the board to agree that future reports will be made to Staff Governance Committee. Pleased that Alistair's Patterson's here, who's the General Manager at Dr. Gray's. Alistair's our long-standing Armed Forces and Veterans champion, and he's well placed to describe the work being done and planned in respect of the Covenant. So I'll hand over to Alistair, who will summarise some of the key points within the paper and the action plan, and also answer any questions from board members. So over to yourself, Alistair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Philip, and thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm really pleased to be able to provide this update to you today. So this is the first report I've brought to the board on Armed Forces matters, and the purpose of doing so, as Philip said, is to provide the board with an awareness of the Armed Forces Covenant duty, the range of activity, both that's ongoing as a matter of day-to-day business, as well as some key areas of focus for us and for me as the Armed Forces and Veterans Champion for the next 12 to 18 months. Given the duty, rather, which is relatively new, it's important, I feel, for the board to feel assured that through the activity and the action plan, we have an appropriate level of attention that demonstrates that due regard piece to the principles of the Armed Forces Covenant and the duty itself. And in light of this being a relatively new obligation, be content with the proposed reporting and governance arrangements for this activity going forward. The NHS Grampian Best Practice Action Plan, which is in the paper, has been developed in response to the MOD statutory guidance on the Armed Forces Covenant duty, and really my assessment of that relative to the work that I do as the Armed Forces and Veterans Champion for NHS Grampian. Fundamentally, the aim here is to raise the profile of and the awareness of the Armed Forces community, their needs, to negate the potential disadvantages faced by the Armed Forces community, but also promote the advantages of being an Armed Forces friendly organisation and the mutual benefits really that exist by working with the Armed Forces community. So the duty is not prescriptive in terms of the actions that bodies should undertake. However, and helpfully, after this meeting, indeed this afternoon, I'm attending what is the monthly NHS Scotland Armed Forces and Veterans Champions Network Group meeting to help them shape and define the menu of best practice actions in the Scottish context, what these could look like given the significant regional variation that exists between NHS boards and how they fulfil this role. So this is a work in progress. It's under development at a national level. That said, I think in NHS Grampian, I think that we are working on this from a good baseline, and Table 1 in Appendix 1 describes much of our current activity, as well as some further activity planned in relation to that MOD best practice themes and actions. I think in Grampian, we've established some really good connections and relationships with our MOD bases across the region, as well as many third sector organisations who work to support armed forces families, the communities and veterans. And we're working very collaboratively alongside our local authority partners, who of course are also signed up to the Armed Forces Covenant. That said, there's always more to do, and I think one of those particular areas that we need to work harder at is in relation to research and understanding better what our armed forces community actually looks like across the region. And there are a few key work streams described within the action plan that will help us to do that. And indeed, last week I attended the Aberdeenshire Council Veterans Group and met with colleagues from Robert Gordon University who are working on some research to understand what some of the specific challenges accessing care services for female veterans are, and we've agreed to meet to discuss that further in the new year. Specifically, Chair, I was keen just to highlight some of the activities planned for the coming 12 to 18 months. They're described in Table 2. One of those is around the employee recognition scheme and our ambition to go for gold award status. We currently have silver award status, and after sadly an unsuccessful submission for gold award status last year, we're going to go for gold award status again through the nomination process, which opens in January next year. And working with our regional employer engagement director, we've got some work to do around advocacy in particular. And as described in the paper, we need to work to demonstrate proactive steps and activity and clear success in encouraging partner organisations and their supply chain to engage with and sign the Armed Forces Covenant or mentor others progressing through the employee recognition scheme. We've recently engaged with our Chambers of Commerce colleagues, and I think that provides us with a great opportunity to engage with wider businesses and organisations across the region to help with that. One of the other key things, and just thoughtful about the paper that was being discussed previously around corporate parenting, we are engaging with an NSS-hosted programme called SAFE, which is supporting armed forces employment. We've got a meeting with the programme director scheduled early in the new year. And whilst we already employ, as Philip said, a number of people from the armed forces community, I think we've got a great opportunity to do more given the regional military presence. One of the other key pieces of work that's alluded to in the paper is that of an equalities impact assessment of the action plan to be completed during the course of the next 12 months, and for that to be reported as proposed via the Population Health Committee. And there's a significant piece of work around implementation of recommendations in the Veterans Mental Health and Wellbeing Action Plan, which again is currently being discussed at a national level and is part of the conversation that I'll be having this afternoon at the Armed Forces Veterans Champions Network meeting. And finally, just one other piece of work I think important to highlight is that work that we are going to undertake to encourage general practice to engage with a new GP recognition scheme. The Minister for Veterans has issued a further set of information on this via the Armed Forces Champions Network just this week, which complements a letter issued by the National Clinical Director earlier this year, which highlights the minimum steps that GP practices can take to help them identify their patients who are members of the armed forces community. And that really helps us then understand what the health requirements, health needs are of those people living in our communities. So I'll pause there, Chair, if I may, but thank you very much for taking the paper and for listening to my presentation.
Thank you very much, Alistair. And I think it's really important to have this paper in front of us today because it shows various strands of work being brought together as well and gives us a sense of the direction going forward as well. So thank you very much for the paper. Are there any questions or comments, please? Dennis, please. Dennis?
Oh, sorry, Chair. Just about I'm sticking there. Alistair, thanks very much for this paper. It's really, I suppose, expanding slightly, and maybe it comes from the previous paper as well. But in terms of that wider family, and that is the families of people in the armed forces, whether or not they're still serving or indeed veterans, the impact on families maybe having moved around and, you know, through education and stuff like that. Do we have the sufficient support network for families of serving personnel and indeed when people leave the armed forces, the impact on the wider family, as opposed to just the individual who has actually been serving or is currently serving.
Thank you, Dennis. Alistair?
Yeah, I think a really good question, Dennis. I don't know whether I could absolutely quantify whether we have that in all cases, but certainly as part of the activity that I support, I get a lot of inquiries from serving personnel, veterans, families who are relocating, families who are having challenges accessing healthcare services, families who are having difficulties seeking employment because of things like childcare issues. And this is something that we've been, as I'm sure you'll be very well aware, certainly in the Moray context, working with our local partners to understand a bit better and to try to put in place measures and mechanisms that support them in relation to whichever element of that support that is required. One of the other difficulties that exists is when people are relocating is actually accessing healthcare records or maintaining positions on waiting lists if they've been receiving healthcare treatment in a different host board or a different trust. So this makes up quite a significant part of my kind of case management as the Armed Forces and Veterans Champion. And I think it would be fair to say that there's still quite a lot of work to be done. We get it right for a lot of people, but some people's challenges or issues are quite complex, and therefore it takes quite a bit of time and effort to navigate existing healthcare systems to ensure that they get the right support. But there are some common themes, without doubt, that exist across local authority areas, one specifically being that of childcare for people who are seeking employment.
Thank you, Alistair. Is that helpful, Dennis?
Yeah, thanks for the explanation. And I suppose really with the advancement of the digital reports, etc., hopefully some of these challenges will be overcome when we actually take on some of the digital work that was spoken about earlier from Stephen Allen. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Dennis. Alistair, when I was reading the paper, I suppose one thing that rose out as a concern was the fact that we do have veterans, we do have armed forces families living right across Grampian, and I was maybe concerned although there's got to be a focus in Moray because that's a huge community, there are communities right across the Grampian area as well, and also individual families living as veterans in a community on their own. And so I think you brought this out from the way you're talking about engaging with local authorities, but can you just give that assurance as well that veterans, armed forces families, wherever they live across NHS Grampian, are going to be given the support that they need going forward? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and absolutely, and you're right, and I guess that's probably partly the kind of benefit of the proximity from my own perspective, working up in Moray and being close to two significant MOD bases. Absolutely recognise that there's a lot of need out and beyond Moray, and my kind of link with the Aberdeenshire Council Veterans Group is proving really useful in that context. I also attended a really enlightening event, I would say, down in Aberdeen at the Beach Ballroom just a few weeks back. It was an army engagement event, and that opened up quite a new view on the MOD presence in and around Aberdeen and Aberdeenshire. So developing some connections with a number of people on the back of that to help to really begin to build those relationships and understand the needs beyond Moray. We did a really good exercise up in Moray with Highlands and Islands Enterprise. It's alluded to in the paper. It was an economic impact of the defence presence across this region. We looked at the health and social care employed sector, if you like. What we're keen to do, having described that in with other groups, is to expand that and roll that out beyond Moray, so that we can get a really good understanding as to what that looks like across the whole region, and then take actions or build an action plan appropriate to what that advises us. So that's another piece of work that's planned for the coming 12 to 18 months.
Brilliant, and we look forward to seeing that through the governance routes that are outlined here as well. So thank you very much for that. I can't see any other indications here, so can we agree the recommendations, the insurance and the agreement on future reporting through the relevant committees? Can we agree the recommendations, please? Thank you very much for that. Thank you. Recommendations agreed. Then thank you again, Alistair, for the paper there and raising the awareness of this issue for us all. Thank you. Then we move on to item 14, the Forum and Integration Joint Board reports. First of all, 14.1, the Area Clinical Forum. Mark, do you want to add anything to this, please?
I'll keep it very brief, Chair. Thanks very much. Obviously, the report's in front of you. I think one of the things that we highlighted that Adam had brought up previously in the meeting was about what visions we're looking for delivery in the future. And that's really probably going to be our biggest focus going through over the next number of sessions, I suppose. And one other very positive thing is that I'd like to report back is the engagement we get with our Chief Executive's team at a meeting with the other chairs of the area clinical forums around Scotland. And it's always encouraging whenever I can suggest to them that we have a very good interaction with our Chief Executive team. We're very supported and we get a very good flow of information, which is not necessarily highlighted through the other ACFs around the country. So I always leave the meeting feeling really quite positive where we are. And the other thing we're trying to develop is a positive culture around all of our advisory committees, that we do actually do quite a good job here. We do see quite a few patients, and we've got to make sure we focus on the positives as well as the negatives that can sometimes be difficult in a constrained financial envelope and all of the other things that come along with it. But we do actually provide fairly good healthcare up and around Grampian, we think. So that's sort of a culture aspect to it. But I'd just like the board just to note the papers, and I'll take any questions if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you also to everybody. It helps to contribute to that positivity as well, and that Mark's described. Thank you very much. All right, can we note that paper then? Any questions? No. Note that paper. Thanks very much, Mark. The 14.2, the Grampian Area Partnership Forum paper. Stephen, anything to add, please?
No, thank you, Alison. I think the paper covers it's a summary of the activities of GPF and the conversations that we've had there over the past couple of months. Happy to take any questions from colleagues. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. Any questions? Can't see anything indicated there, so can we note that paper as well, please? Thank you. And the 14.3, the Integration Joint Boards papers and the Chief Officers. Simon, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think the report mirrors the conversation and the presentation of the IJB annual performance report. So there is a number of common themes that you'll see over the course of the past years and future, of similarity between issues which are being brought forward to the IJBs, but also the local variation, which reflects the different strands of work that need to take place to reflect the local circumstances. And I think, again, a report that reflects the volume and breadth of work that's happening out in the IJBs. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Simon. Any questions, comments? So can we note that paper as well, please, or those papers as well, please? Thank you. Papers noted. All right, then we move on to item 15, the approved committee forum and IJB minutes from 2023. Sarah, please.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Sorry, my camera doesn't seem to be working, so you'll just have to have my voice, which is a bit croaky. I'm afraid there's an omission in this section. We should have included the minutes from the Joint Staff Governance and Clinical Governance Committee that was held on the 21st of September. That minute has now been approved by the Clinical Governance Committee and the Staff Governance Committee, but an oversight on my part, I'm afraid. We didn't include it in the pack today. So we'll circulate that minute to everybody, and we will put it in the public pack on the board webpage as well. And if anybody has any questions on it, that can be done under matters arising at the next board meeting.
Thank you very much for that, Sarah. Thank you for that. So we'll go through the papers that we do have in front of us today. 15.1, the Audit and Risk Committee of the 5th of September. These are all obviously papers just to agree to the 14.2, the Performance Assurance, Finance and Infrastructure Committee of the 13th of August. So no comments, I'll move on. 15.3, the Staff Governance Committee of the 22nd of August. Okay, no comments, so I'll move on. 15.4, the Clinical Governance Committee of the 29th of August. Thank you, I'll move on then. 15.5, the Grampian Charities Committee, 2 papers, the 2nd of June and the 29th of September. Thank you. And 15.6, the Population Health Committee of the 7th of July. Thank you. Then the forums, 15.7, the Area Clinical Forum, the 6th of September. Thank you. 15.8, the Grampian Area Partnership Forum, 2 sets of papers, the 17th of August and the 19th of October. Thank you. And then the Integration Joint Boards, the IJBs, 15.9 is Aberdeen City IJB of the 22nd of August. 15.10 is the Aberdeenshire IJB of the 23rd of August. Okay, and the Murray IJB of the 29th of June. Okay, I've seen no comments on any of those papers, so we've noted all of those approved minutes. Thank you very much for that. Moving on to item 16, any other business? I do have one other item of business myself. This is also Sarah Duncan's last board meeting with us as well. So just wanted to thank Sarah for all her work that she's done and all her guidance around governance and helping us move forward on that journey that we've all been on and continue to be on together as well. So Sarah, thank you very much for all your contributions and your guidance to all of us over a number of years. We've very much appreciated the support you've given each and every one of us. So thank you. And I see lots of claps coming up as well for you, Sarah. So really pleased with that. Thank you. Any other business? No, thank you. I think there's also messages for you in the chat as well, Sarah, so I'll leave you to read those and enjoy those. Item 17, of course, is the date of the next meeting, which is Thursday, the 14th of March 2024. So look forward to seeing the wider group there on the 14th of March 2024. So thank you very much for your attendance today. I'll be seeing the board members themselves very soon again this afternoon. So thank you. Look forward to seeing you then. And I declare this meeting closed and best wishes to those for whom it's the last meeting as well. Thank you.